Okay, Hannele is back here, and now I am sharing my screen, and hopefully you can see the program of our meeting for today. So this event is organized as part of the Arctic Science Summit Week 2020 activities. And this meeting is open for anyone who's interested about the Interact project and about our transnational access, remote access and virtual access activities. And in this meeting, we want to give you an overview and highlights about our transnational remote and virtual access activities in Interact. We are going to have two sessions in this meeting. The first session, the morning session, is devoted to Interact 2, our current funding period that started in 2016. And we are going to tell you about the legacy of Interact 2, what we have achieved, what kind of results we have obtained from Interact 2. Then in the afternoon session, we are going to focus on the future and Interact 3, that is our new funding period that just started in January this year. So you are going to learn about our ambition and plans in Interact 3 and transnational access and station manager activities. The first presentation we are going to have today is about Interact and transnational access, the concept, the results, and the legacy. And this presentation is going to be provided by Margareta Johansson, our lovely and fantastic Interact main coordinator from Lund University. Please, Margareta, the stage is yours.
Thank you ever so much, Hannele. And of course, I have paid her to say those lovely things about me, just for the record. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this seminar again. It's lovely to have you on board, even though it is under different circumstances that we anticipated. It's nice that there are options anyhow. So I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see my presentation, I hope. Okay, we will see if we manage. I'm not as used to this as, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it very nicely, and we can also hear you very well.
Good. Should I remove this one so that you only see the screen, perhaps? Like that?
Yeah, this is very good now, I think.
You only see my screen now, or?
We can see the screen and then a small icon of people's faces, and that's
perfect.
Also very nice. We can see you speaking, so that's good.
Oh, perfect. That's great. Good. Thank you, Hannele. And I'm sorry, everyone, for it's me and technology. It's a bad combination. So I wanted to say a few things about Interact, and I think I will just start. I'm sure that you're all aware of Interact, but just to make sure that you're sort of following. We are now a network of 88 research stations all over the Arctic. So the research stations are, as I said, situated in all of the Arctic countries, but also in adjacent high alpine or forested areas. And of course, this is to be able to say something. If you want to know what's going on in the future in the Arctic, you also need to know the closest border, like the taiga, etc. What will the future look like? So 88 research stations, and the one thing that they all have in common is that it is terrestrial, land-based research stations. I'm sure you're aware, but there are ways of learning out about all the research stations and the ongoing research. So we have just updated a station catalog for all the 80, I think there are 86 research stations in this. So the two newest one have not managed to get into that station catalog, but they will be added very shortly. But there you can read about the stations, how to get there, what their focus are, etc. There is also a research and monitoring catalog that tells what research and monitoring is ongoing at the different research stations. That can be interesting to look at before you go to a research station. And then, of course, we have the card game that is updated every year, where you can learn about the research station. And this is something you can do with everyone, with your kids, with your grandparents, whatever. It is an easy game, but you learn about the Arctic and the different, for example, different temperatures, precipitation, etc. So we are in the second phase of Interact, and this is an advanced community because, as you can see, it's a second phase of Interact. So that means that there was a first phase of Interact, and that was between 2011 and 2016. And then the 1st of October 2016, we were granted this project. It's a 4-year project in Horizon 2020. We have 47 partners from all Arctic countries, and the total budget is 10 million euros. And out of those 10 million euros, we use half of it for transnational access, to be able to bring people to the field and also have remote access and virtual access, which we will be talking a little bit more about soon. Hannele was saying that this first session is about Interact 2, and I agree. But of course, when I'm talking about the overall project, I wanted to say a few things about Interact 3 as well. So I said our current state is the second phase of Interact, and our current status is actually also the third phase of Interact, which is a luxury. So it's a super duper advanced community. If the other one was advanced, this is a super duper advanced community. But basically, it is a 4-year project as well in Horizon 2020. So it started the 1st of January, which means that we have an overlap of 9 months between, currently, we have an overlap of 9 months between Interact 2 and Interact 3. It might change in the future because of coronavirus, but we will see. There are 63 partners from all the Arctic countries, and again we have a total budget of 10 million euros, where more than half of it is spent for transnational access. Within Interact 3, our third phase, we have decided to focus on 6 societal challenges. And the first one is the unpredictable Arctic, extreme weather events. We all know that they are increasing, but they are very difficult to monitor and predict. So that's why we're devoting some time on this. Second one is connecting the Arctic, transport and communication. So everyone who has been working in Russia with soil samples know that it can be difficult to get them out of there, for example, and there are many other examples like that. So how can we work on improving the transportation in between countries for example, researchers, but also how can we improve the communication at the research stations? It is of utmost importance when it comes to safety, etc. So this is something that we will be working on. Also, many of the research stations have been ongoing for a long time. And there are data that is hidden. How can we pull out this hidden data? Well, we're hoping to be able to do that by using AI and making data more available, basically. And then, of course, the future is our kids. So we want to contribute to improving education and awareness. And this is something we will do together with the BBC. We will also focusing on cleaner Arctic, cleaner world, documenting and reducing pollution in the Arctic. And the last societal challenges that we have decided to focus on in Interact 3 is the Arctic resort, increasing benefits and reducing impacts from developing tourism. And we have external collaborators in all of these societal challenges. And basically, Interact is and has always been an infrastructure project. That means that it has 3 components. It has a networking component, which in our case is the Station Managers Forum. It has a transnational access component, which we are focusing on here. And then it has a joint research activity component. So the networking component are all the research station leaders, the station managers that are contributing to this. TA is of course led by Hannele now from Holo, and then the joint research activities will be led by external users or organizations. But again, we are here to focus on the transnational access. And we started with transnational access already in Interact 1. at that time, there was a possibility to pay for visits. EU was paying for visits to all of Europe, but also to Russia. So between this 2011 and 2015, we had those stations that were offering, you see the small blue dots. I know this is when you are bringing out your binoculars and you are looking at the slide, and then you will see them. Try that. Anyhow, so as you can see, there was a whole continent where we had no dots. When we started this project, luckily, we had 4 partners in North America. It was Center for Northern Studies in Quebec City. We had American Institute of North America, as well as Tule Lake Research Station, which you will hear more about very soon, and Barrow Research Station. That all said, can't we also provide transnational access, and shipped in money themselves from their funding agencies. And by doing that, we actually created transnational access that was pan-Arctic between 2011 and 2015. When Interact 2 was announced, there was a possibility from the EU to actually have pan-Arctic transnational access. And we were extremely happy for that, because of course, if you want to look at what's going on in the Arctic, you need to look at the whole of the Arctic and not just a big part of it. So that's the story behind it. So the transnational access in Interact 2, we have free access to 43 infrastructures and installations. In total, we have 6,850 person days of transnational access that has been awarded and will be awarded through 2016 to 2020. 970 person days of remote access in 2016, well, the same period for the same period. And the total between the transnational access and the remote access is almost 8,000 days. So transnational access means that you cannot go to an infrastructure within your own country. And also there is a limit of 90 user days per group. So you cannot be awarded more than 90 days of transnational access. We have had annual calls in September, October, and the decisions have been out in February, March every year. Yes. And so far, we have had 3 calls.
Actually, we have had 4, but the one is not here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One is not. We haven't done the 4th. We have done 3 of them.
No, we have done it and we have granted the project, but it was not added here because it was the decisions were sent out in February. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hannele, ever so much.
Yeah.
I meant that the projects have not been carried out.
Yes,
they will be carried out perhaps this summer or whenever the coronavirus will allow us.
But they will be carried out sooner or later.
Yes. Thank you very much, Hannele. That's great. But before this last call that was out in September, October, we had almost 170 projects. 42 out of 43 stations that were offering transnational access have had visits. In total, we have granted 5,821 days and used a big part of our budget, basically, 80% of our budget. And we have used more in the last call. Hannele, do you have any numbers for the last call?
Yeah, I just made quick calculations. Sorry. And it was 63 projects that were granted access for like this summer, forthcoming summer, or whatever, whenever they will take place.
Yes.
And it was about 2,200 days, if I remember correctly.
So basically we have used more than we had from the beginning.
Yes.
Which is brilliant.
Yes,
and
we have made some budget transfers, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just to let you know, I hope I've done, Hannele, will you sort of keep me on track in terms of time? as well? Sorry,
I
don't have it.
Fine. You have 10 minutes, 15
Oh,
minutes.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, I just wanted to let you know that when we say that we have used more than our days, that is okay, because some of the stations, when you make this budget and calculation from the beginning, you are estimating how many researchers that you can accept. But then, of course, there might be more people want to go to one research station than another. And then we have a very flexible system that is allowing us to shift from one station to another, which can result that we might get more days than we expected from the beginning, because all of them don't cost the same. I hope that was somewhat an explanation. Thank you, Hannele. Okay, but anyhow, we have basically spent all our money in Interact 2. In addition to the transnational access, there is also remote access, and this basically means that stations go out and collect, for example, samples. So you send in your research plan, and then there will be staff at the station that can do it for you. Of course, this depends on what type of research you're doing. In some cases, this is perfect. If you need to dig down a tea bag, then I guess that everyone can do that with some sort of it's not that difficult. But of course, if you need to install things and complicated equipment, etc., then it might be better to go there yourself. We have 20 partners in Interact 2 that are offering remote access, and in total it's 970 staff days. So rather than having user days to the research, because of course the researchers are not going there, it's staff days, so it's actually paying for the people that are working there. Logistics costs are reimbursed. So if you are taking samples and you need them sent to your home, then it can be covered by the remote access. It's the same call and application process as the TA. It's a continuous call, so you can basically send in your application whenever you want. Hannele, is it reviewed at the same time as the transnational access calls?
Yeah, I could correct this. This slide, I think we had that system for continuous call for remote access when we started with Interact 2. But in practice, there were not so, it is such a small proportion of all applications. It's maybe 10% of all applications that are as remote access. So that is why we stopped these continuous calls a little bit more than a year ago. And that is why we now have the remote access call at the same time with the regular transnational access call. So this is a little bit changed now. So no continuous call for remote access, but it happens always at the same time and with the same procedure as for regular transnational access. No, I can't hear you, Magan. I think you might. You look like muted, Magan, now. I don't know what happened to your microphone.
More comfortable on a stage, I must say.
You will get used to this.
Yes, but you're a pro already. But anyhow, virtual access is another modality within the transnational access. And basically it means that the research stations have got their data online so that anyone can can access it. We have 20 partners within Interact 2 that are providing virtual access. So far, I think 18 has got their things up, and we are still waiting for 2, but they will join later. And then we will have a big promotion campaign in summer 2020, but Hannele will be talking more about that, so I won't mention that more. And then I wanted to say a few things about the legacy. And we are, of course, extremely happy that EU are contributing and allowing us to help more than 900 scientists to go to the field. So since the start of Interact 1, we have sent more than 900 scientists. So we are extremely happy about this. And of course, this results in publications. So far, there have been more than 120 peer-reviewed publications. There are more coming up, we know that. It also, of course, you have to come home, you have to prepare the data and analyze the data, etc. So this is something that will continue to increase, but we are very, very happy with the outcomes. Interact is also contributing to, Interact Transnational Access is also contributing to science diplomacy. We have opened up the Arctic to all of the world. We have TA users from very many different places on Earth. So it's not just the member countries that can apply to go to transnational access in the Arctic. Anyone can do that, wherever you're from. So we are very, very happy that we have got this possibility. And then there have been unique findings. And one of them, we should have had a presentation today, but I don't think we will have that, unfortunately.
I can actually see Baptiste here, so I hope he can have the presentation.
Oh, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. Then I will say absolutely nothing apart from that there was a little new bumblebee species, and we are so honored that it was named Bombus interacti. The ultimate love declaration. Thank you ever so much. We are delighted. You can learn about previous transnational access projects in this Stories of Arctic Science book that is available on our website. It was published in 2015, and basically it's popular science presentations, two pages for each of the projects, telling about the projects. We are currently making a new Stories of Arctic Science, and we are sort of halfway through that and expect it to be ready maybe in the autumn or so. But it will have some new, in addition to this same layout with 2-page where we talk about the aims of the project, what did we do, where did we work, what did we find, why are the results important, and the adventure. We will also have additional material like movies, etc., and you can swipe. Again, me and technology, but I think it will be a nice product in the end. So with that, I just want to tell you that everything about our project and our transnational access you can find on our website. So thank you ever so much. Now I will stop share, hopefully, and turn off my microphone.
Thank you so much, Magan. Now, does anyone have any questions or comments from Magan? There would be still some time for those before we move forward in the program. If not, a big thank you to Margareta, and we can come back with additional questions at a later stage as well. And now I will start sharing my screen and show you where we are in the program. So next we are going to hear a station highlight. We are going to have Sindonia Brett Hart from the University of Alaska Fairbanks presenting the Tulik Research Station in Alaska, USA. Sindonia, you're welcome. You can now enable your microphone and your camera, please, and start sharing your screen.
Hi, everyone. Let me see if I can get my screen share going here.
Yeah. Yes, we can see it now.
Okay, great. So it's midnight in Alaska, so I apologize if I'm a little sleepy here, but I want to give you a brief overview of the Tulik Field Station. Tulik Field Station is located in the northern part, the Arctic part of Alaska, north of the Brooks Range, as you can see in the map here. And it's quite an old field station in North America. It was started in 1975 when this intrepid band of adventurers was driving down the Hall Road, which wasn't even completed at that point, and they were looking for a lake that was deep enough to have overwintering populations of fish. And they found it at Tulik Lake, so they started a station there. And at the beginning, it was just a cluster of little trailers along the edge of a runway. But in later years, we moved to the other side of the lake. And now we're located on a little peninsula with the Brooks Range, in between the Brooks Range and the Arctic Coastal Plain in the foothill province of the Arctic Alaska. And why do people continue to work here since 1975? Well, there's a variety of reasons. First of all, we're a representative Arctic site. And we have a lot of environmental and ecological gradients that are fairly close to the station. So we have road access, and you can drive from the Brooks Range down to the coastal plain and through the Foothill Province. And there's also a lot of different types of, there's also a lot of different types of tundra and different types of lakes and streams that are fairly close to the station. So there's a lot of stuff to work on. We are open year round, and we have good communications and transportation and a nice field station, which also makes it fairly easy for work to be done here. And then now we have this wonderful history that we're a well-studied site with an extensive database, and there's lots of multidimensional research, which I'll tell you just a little bit about. And importantly, some very long-term whole system experiments or manipulations. At present, we have somewhere between 350 and 650 visitors that come to Toolik each year, so it's quite a large station compared to many others. About 100 different universities, agencies, and organizations send scientists to Toolik each year. And depending on the year, between 90 and 120 different research projects have worked out of Toolik for each year of the last 5 years. And that means we have a nice population of graduate students, undergraduate students, and high school teachers who also take advantage of our facility. And most of that research is supported by our U.S. National Science Foundation, which supports about an average of around 86%, but the rest is supported by different agencies within the United States and, of course, international agencies such as the Swedish Research Council and Interact. Very exciting. And also there are more than 20,000 plots and research sites in the vicinity of Toolik. So we have 9 labs, 3 of which are winter capable, a dining hall and kitchen, which is very nice, which is also winter capable. And we just got some new dormitories with single rooms, which is very exciting. And we're eventually hoping to get some additional labs and a lecture hall. We have internet access via a T1 fiber optic line and housing for up to 150 people. We're like our own little village on the North Slope with a kitchen, dining hall, water treatment facilities, and we generate our own power. And we have road access, importantly, via the Dalton Highway. We've been open year round since 2006. We've been open since 1975, but only through the winter since 2006. And we get great science and infrastructure support from the U.S. National Science Foundation. So this is a fairly recent picture that shows, again, the station and the lake, which is a large freshwater lake, 20 meters deep. That is the focus of a lot of studies, Toolik Lake, and then the mountains in the background. And you can see here on this little diagram, sort of the lab side of camp, kind of in front of you, with the boat dock into where the boats are. And then the residence side of camp is on the other side, and there's a garage and some generators in the background. Isn't always quite as beautiful weather as this, of course. And then for another thing that's probably somewhat unique, or not completely unique to us, but we offer a lot of science services to our research community in running the station. So we have a publication database online that's updated about once a year. We have a science support department that will build stuff for you. So if you realize suddenly that what you really need is a square that's divided into 100 smaller squares with strings, we can make that for you. We can help support your autonomous power systems that are out powering your data loggers. We give you access to vehicles and boats and things like that. We have a GIS department that has survey grade GIS equipment that's available for checkout. They will also make you custom maps and help you analyze your geographic data. We also offer drone services. So our GIS department is certified as pilots in the United States, and they have a drone, a very nice drone that they can fly and give you imagery in the regular red, blue, and green, also NDVI. They can produce digital elevation models via structure for motion. Quite a nice set of services and very popular these days. We have an environmental data center that collects baseline environmental data that complements what the Arctic LTER project has been collecting for a long time. So we have meteorological data that are available, and we collect phenological data on the timing of important events and life stages of plants and birds, and the timing of ice off and ice out, and snow cover and green up via images, and we collect data on snow depth, and all those data are available on our website or by request, so anybody can use them as virtual access. And we purchase and maintain and schedule a lot of common use scientific equipment, so there's lots of balances and things like that. You don't have to bring all that stuff if you come. If you check with us, we might already have it, and you can certainly schedule to use it. And then we do provide limited field assistance and remote access and other forms of support to researchers. And of course, logistical support, including the use of vehicles, which is nice because that's basically free to you if you're using our station vehicles. You don't have to rent a car. Snow machines, boats, and we have awesome food. So yeah, just a little highlight on our environmental data. Our MET station data goes back for about 40 years now, and all of our time-lapse photography images are online. We're a fairly big station. This is a user day is one person for one day, and so you can see that population fluctuates over time, but we usually have between 6,000 and 8,000 science user days in the course of a year. Most of that use is during the summer season, because that's when the peak of biological activity is. And you can see that we also support projects that range in size. So this is from one recent year that shows the science projects sort of by user days, and you can see there's some very big ones like the Arctic LTER on the bottom in the green, and then the NEON project, which is the National Ecological Observatory Network in blue just immediately to the right, and a variety of mid-sized projects. And then the blue pie on the left side of the screen is actually a lot of small projects, all 39 projects that have less than 100 user days each. So we try to support everybody from large to small. And in this particular year, there were 462 individuals in 7,115 user days. And we also do have a limited number of field classes, as well as the science research projects. And some of the networks that are based at Toolik include the LTER program, Long-Term Ecological Research Program, which is a US program that has sort of one site in each biome. And actually in Alaska, there are 4 of those sites that go from the Arctic and Boreal inland, and then 2 oceanic ones that are along the coast. We have the Arctic Observing Network program, which is funded by the US National Science Foundation and has a variety of projects that are all more different perhaps, but all focused on trying to understand how the Arctic is changing and what's likely to happen in the future. Of course, Interact, and then NEON, and then finally EarthScope, which is a geology program that is looking at trying to map the deep substructure of the Earth by measuring earthquakes across the surface of the Earth. And then of course, in terms of the Interact, this is an older slide of Interact, but it shows a sort of Interact vision to strategically sample the northern parts of the world across the environmental envelope and how it's changing. And I just want to note here on the left that if you see Toolik is circled there, we're in the zone of continuous permafrost and relatively low mean annual precipitation and relatively cold. I wanted to just briefly kind of basically gloss over some of the types of research that's done at Toolik, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Interact projects. So we have what you might call sort of abiotic research, which includes things on space physics, geology, hydrology, and permafrost. There's a fairly significant group of scientists that you probably won't see if you come in the summer because they mostly work in the winter, looking at space weather and what happens with the winds and the upper atmosphere right at the edge of space. And they do that by visualizing what's going on in the aurora. There's also the geology project I mentioned, inferring the deep substructure of the Earth by looking at that time lag that happens when an earthquake is detected. If you have a network of detectors and you can see what that time lag is across all the different sites, and you get an idea of how thick the rock is between where the earthquake was and where the detectors are. There's work on the hydrology of Arctic streams and rivers, and also on the impacts of changing hydrology for transportation, funded mainly by the state of Alaska's Department of Transportation. And then of course, lots of work on changing permafrost and the implications for the release of atmospheric greenhouse gases. We also have some sort of chemistry research, which is mainly looking at the deposition, processing, and fate of different airborne pollutants that are transported over long distances. That includes things like mercury, persistent organic pollutants, and brominated flame retardants. Of course, there aren't really any sources of those close to Toolik, but that Toolik is a nice background for comparing with what's happening in more populated areas. And then there's also a fairly big group that's looking at photodegradation of dissolved organic carbon in streams. And there's groups that work with animals and plants, but mainly with animals, on looking at adaptation to the Arctic environment and how animals are coping with change, and how whether or not there are mismatches developing between the timing of plant life stages and the timing of animal life stages. And so there are groups that have looked at migratory birds, insects, small mammals, and plants. And then, of course, the focus of the Arctic LTER program is really trying to understand the structure and function of Arctic ecosystems and how they're likely to change as climate changes. And so there is focus on plant and animal communities, the controls over biogeochemical cycling of carbon and nutrients, the effects of glacial history, how connected ecosystems are, how open they are versus how closed they are to the movement of both organisms and nutrients. There's lots of experiments that have looked at warming and fertilizing lakes, streams, and the terrestrial ecosystems. And then more recently, focused on disturbance, especially fire and ground subsidence due to the thawing soils or thermokarst, and how that affects ecosystem function. There have been a number of groups that have looked at trying to infer past climate from shrub growth and relate that to what's happening now. And then these observing programs that I mentioned before, the Arctic Observing Network and the NEON and the LTER also are just looking at observing change and how it's impacting ecosystem. And the goal of that really is to try to forecast how these functions of Arctic ecosystems will change under climate change, and try to scale up the understanding from experiments to the landscape and region. And recently there's been some focus as well on looking at the impacts of changing timing and changing seasonality on streams, plants, microbes, and animals. So we've been really happy to be part of Interact since the beginning. And in fact, we are hoping originally, still hoping actually, that we would have 5 transnational access projects at TULIC this summer, coming from Russia, Finland, Sweden, Spain, and Denmark, plus 1 remote access project coming from Sweden. We had 4 TA projects in 2019 from Denmark, Italy, Spain, and Sweden. 2 TA projects in 2018, both from Sweden that year, plus 4 remote access projects, 2 from Finland and then from Poland and the Czech Republic. 2 in 2017 and 1 RA in 2017. And then 4 projects in the previous round of funding, including 2 sets of visitations from Belgium, which I think Baptiste is going to tell you about perhaps some of the work that they did at TULIC as part of those 2 projects. And we are also super excited about the possibility of maybe hosting the next Interact meeting at TULIC in the fall of 2020. But we have to make a slight caveat here with the COVID-19 pandemic, which of course puts us all into unexpected and challenging times. And so at present, TULIC is actually closed to researchers until July 1st of 2020. We are hoping that we'll be able to reopen on July 1st, but we don't really know so far. Basically, we can't afford to introduce the novel coronavirus into our remote location because we're so far, 9 hours by car from many hospitals. And in fact, the state of Alaska as a whole doesn't really have many hospital beds compared to a lot of other states. And so at present, travel is restricted both internationally and within the US coming into Alaska, which makes it quite challenging to welcome researchers at this time. But we do continue to offer remote access, and we're hoping that as the time goes on, if our government can get its act together to address the pandemic successfully, that we'll be able to reopen on July 1st. So stay in touch, especially if you were hoping to come this summer. We'll let you know what's happening. And that's it for now. I think I perhaps didn't have quite as many slides as I would have liked, but I want to leave plenty of time for you to ask questions and to have discussions. So I'll stop here with this nice picture of the Brooks Range across TULIC Lake.
Thank you so much, Doni. What a wonderful station you have. I'm super impressed. Is there any other questions or comments to Doni? I think there are some of our TA users who have actually worked at TULIC Station with support from Transnational Access here in the audience now as well. So if you have anything to comment or ask, or if someone is interested about specific issues related to TULIC, you're welcome to ask.
Yes, please feel free to ask any questions.
I ask a question? Maybe I should do that in the chat, or how does it work, Hannele? Sorry, should I behave?
You can ask now as well.
Okay, sorry.
Fine.
So, can you tell what the options are to come to the station, Doni? How do you travel to the station? Because you told us it's remote and that you're attached, but if I want to go to Toolik State, where do I go and how do I get there?
Excellent question. I'm sorry, I should have covered that and I didn't. There are two ways to get to Toolik. You can fly to Fairbanks, Alaska, which is in the heart of the interior, and then we run trucks and provide transportation from Fairbanks up to Toolik 3 times a week. And so you can jump on one of our science support trucks and that won't cost you anything. Alternatively, you can fly into Prudhoe Bay, which is far north of us at the very edge of the Arctic Ocean. And then we also do run a shuttle in the summer months twice a week up to Prudhoe Bay. So there's 2 great places to fly into. And as soon as the travel restrictions get opened up, you are welcome to do that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions to Doni at this stage? I could just comment myself that I was really impressed when you were telling about the amount of projects that you're hosting annually and the amount of data and observations that you are collecting, the kind of the monitoring programs that you are running at the station. And of course you have this environmental data center where you store the data, and I'm just really excited that you are joining now in the provision of virtual access in Interact as well. I think that will be a really valuable resource for the scientists as well to start utilizing that, especially under these circumstances now with the COVID-19.
Yeah, we're super excited about that. And actually what we're hoping to do with that virtual access funding from Interact is to help to get links. We have a spatial, we're nearly done developing a sort of spatial database that will link you to the past projects at Toolik, and we want to then put in all the historical information so that you can find the data that have been collected over the years where it's stored. It's a fairly ambitious project that we've been working on for a while, but I think it's going to be really awesome when it's completed.
That's great. I can see Maggan has raised her hand. Please, Maggan, go on if you want to have a question.
Thank you. So I just wondered, because Doni, you are in a very remote place. And I guess the biggest impact on the environment is actually the research station itself. How are you working on reducing the impact from the research station on the environment to make sure that we are actually monitoring the pristine Arctic environment rather than something that we as a scientist have affected?
Great question. I wish I had a great answer, and I don't. We are still, one of our goals in the long run would be to use less diesel, which we generate our electric power with diesel generators. And we do have some renewable energy supplies at Toolik. We've also done a lot to reduce power use simply by switching to, LED type light bulbs and things like that. But we still have a ways to go too in that respect. But offering remote access is another thing that we're doing, and that was really an idea that we got from you guys from Interact. And we're, especially this year with our COVID-19 pandemic, we're going to be offering remote access also to some of our US researchers, which will have the benefit of hopefully enabling them not to lose a lot of their season, but also will reduce the environmental footprint. Yeah, so those are the main things. I think we could do better in this regard, and I'm hoping that in the future we will be able to do better. But it's always a little challenging just because of the way that the money goes. Oh, we've done some things, like we have heat recovery off our generators that helps to heat some of our buildings, and that is another thing that was a very wonderful thing that the National Science Foundation did for us. So that has saved quite a bit of energy as well. But we're not really quite completely sustainable yet.
Doni, that was an excellent answer, and we did not expect you to be, you are where you are located, and it's amazing that you are doing a job on it. So thank you for letting us know.
I think Oriol had a question. I could see that you have sent a message. Oriol, would you like to ask? We can enable your microphone now, okay? You are unmuted now, so.
Hey, Tony. Hey, Hannele.
Hi,
I was just wondering if at this stage, because of the COVID-19 situation, and because we are planning to go to Tuulik this July, should we wait until we know more about this to buy these tickets, or should we already buy them refundable or changeable, or should we just wait at this stage?
Tony, do you have anything, first reaction here?
I would say that you should certainly buy them refundable in case it doesn't, in case we're not able to reopen in July. We certainly are hoping that you'll be able to come, and we should be able, our core crew that's up there through the pandemic will have the drones, so they'll be able to collect data for you as well, but the drone data that you wanted. But yeah, I would think, I mean, if you can, I don't know how it looks from your side. I mean, right now is probably a great time to buy airline tickets because the airlines are feeling really desperate. But if you buy airline tickets soon, I would just that you refundable ones, because it's hard to know, what the situation is going to look like, and we can't really say until we get a little farther along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would go with the same lines with Tony, and then I'm actually going to talk a little bit more in a little bit also general manner about this COVID situation in my presentation in the next session. So it might be that we could perhaps continue the discussions over there as well, and I could provide you, all of you, a little bit general guidelines how to proceed in this situation. But I think it was very wise what Tony said, that if you want to proceed with the bookings now, please take care that your flights are refundable, because it is such an uncertain situation at the moment. Of course, the Tuulik is doing their best, and we are all doing our best to make things happen already this summer, but we cannot know for sure at this stage.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for the question. Are there any other questions? We would still have time for one question or comment. Okay, if not, I think I want to thank Tony once more for a really, really nice and interesting presentation, and all of the participants for good questions and comments about Tony's presentation. And we will now move forward in the program, and I will again share my screen to introduce with our next speaker. And next we are going to hear a TA user project highlight, and this is a project who has also visited Tuulik field station and has made some wonderful, wonderful findings during their visit there. And we are going to hear Baptiste Martinet from University of Mons in Belgium, and he's going to tell us about their project Arctostress, and about high interspecific and low intraspecific variation in heat resistance that unveils species-specific threats for bumblebees under climate change. Baptiste, are you there online? And if you are, please, you can start your presentation and start sharing your screen.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, yes, very well.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, I can see at least very nicely now.
Yeah, and you see my presentation, yeah?
Yes, it is
okay,
there.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So, hello everyone. Usually we say thank you to be here, but today I have to say thank you to be connected. I'm very pleased to present a part of result of our project Arctostress, granted by Interact program. The topic of our research is the study of consequences of heat stress on physiology of crucial pollinators in Arctic, the bumblebees. So today I'm going to tell you a story about bumblebees, but this story can be extrapolated to a large number of organisms that experiencing a global decline over the world. So since we all come from diverse topics in the field of biology, chemistry, and other science, I'm going to spend a few minutes to introduce my biological models, the bumblebees. So bumblebees are insects adapted to cold climates that appear 34 million years ago in Asia and then diversify into many habitats. Here is the actual distribution map of the genus Bombus at present time, with different zones where the genus has been introduced to crop pollination, and the hotspots of diversity are in Arctic, boreal, and mountainous regions. So as you know, probably bumblebees play a key role in our ecosystems. They are partly responsible for the pollination of the fruits and vegetables we eat every day. From economic point of view, pollination services represent more than 100 billion euro per year. And here are two photos showing a shop of fruit and vegetables with and without pollinators. So it's easy to understand that pollinators and bumblebees are crucial for human populations. So in Arctic, there is a large diversity of bumblebee species, and bumblebees are the only pollinator insect in boreal and Arctic biomes. There are two main groups of bumblebees in Arctic, the Pyrobombus and Alpinobombus group. And species identification inside these two groups is very challenging, and a deep revision of this group is required to study bumblebee fauna in Arctic and boreal regions. So in taiga and in tundra, bumblebees provide considerable ecosystemic services for these habitats, and there are several common plants in Arctic, all exclusively pollinated by bumblebees, with notably all berries, which is a major food resource for northern peoples, and also Edisarum alpinum, a favorite plant for grizzly bear in Alaska, for instance. So there is a biological cycle that links bumblebees, human, plants, and grizzly, for instance. So bumblebees are insects with 6 legs, 2 pairs of wings, but despite the morphological similarities between bumblebee species, the genus Bombus is heterogeneous. Among the more than 250 species of bumblebees, there are more than 400 different color patterns that mix and match the same color of the body. And for instance, to explain the challenge of species identification, here is cut photographs of bumblebees, and despite the morphological similarity, we have 4 different species. And the other case, in these Arctic and mountainous bumblebees, we have only 2 valid species, Bombus monticola and Bombus interacti, that we assess as a valid species in Apennines mountains in Italy. Even for the nutrition, while all bumblebee species feed on pollen and nectar, several species are specialized in specific food resources according to the ratio lipid protein of pollen. Same comment for the habitat. There are a large diversity of habitats where live bumblebees with a preference for cold and polar biotopes, such as tundra or boreal regions. So bumblebees are a social insect with 3 castes, queens, workers, and males, but not all bumblebee colonies are the same. While temperate and tropical species build large colonies with several hundreds of individuals, northern species, such as Bombus polaris or Bombus alpinus, build a small colony with approximately 20 workers. Most of species are social, but some are inquisitive species such as the Psittyrus group, and some species emerge in early spring, while others emerge in summer. Recently, bumblebees experiencing a strong decline of their population, and at European scale, 46% of species are in regression, and this decline, it's mainly Arctic and boreal region, as we can see on the map of Bombus alpinus, where the distribution range decreased dramatically. So globally, different decline factors that can act synergistically have been identified to explain the decline of species. And recently, climate change and floral resources decrease have been pointing out. Sorry? Yeah? Okay. As one of the causes, of the major causes of bumblebee decline, and bumblebees are particularly sensitive to climate change. So when we speak about climate change, we can speak about the slow and progressive increase of mean temperature, and this gradual modification can modify the distribution range of species by moving to the north the populations. This is the case in north of Scandinavia, where 3 meridional species have reached the Arctic Circle, and notably Bombus terrestris, which is an invasive species in some parts of the world. Therefore, during our sampling in the tundra, we were surprised to find for the first time and beyond the Arctic Circle, a new, very competitive and proliferative, which build big nests, certain species, Bombus terrestris. Bombus terrestris is also very resistant to hyperthermic stress. And we found Bombus terrestris foraging side to side on the same plants with Arctic bumblebee, leading to competition for food resources. This new Euro-Mediterranean incomer could be an additional trait for the native and original Arctic bumblebee fauna. Gradual climate change could also modify some phenotypical traits such as body size, which decrease in North America with the increase of temperatures. And smaller workers are less effective to collect pollen and so less effective to crop pollination of cultivates and for wild plants. The other part of climate change is the increase of frequency and intensity of extreme events such as heat waves. In response to these heat waves, to these events, population can react in different ways. And unfortunately, for sensitive species, the most probable way is the extinction, as you can see on the graphic. So the first task of our project is to clarify the taxonomic status of the main bumblebee group living in Arctic, Alpinobombus and Pyrobombus. And for that, we use the integrative taxonomy approach, where we mix different taxonomic operational criteria to propose a robust taxonomic hypothesis. We use the DNA fragment with 1 nuclear and 1 mitochondrial gene, the morphology, and 1 semiochemical criteria with the pheromones. So for a large part of bumblebee species, during their courtship, male perform a patrolling behavior and deposit their pheromones on different parts of the landscape, such as leaves, branches, etc. And these molecules are produced by a cephalic labial glands, which represents approximately 80% of the volume of the head. So thanks to this criteria, in Alaska with DNA or with morphological, pheromone, etc., we have discovered a new bumblebee species for science. And I'm very glad to present you Bombus interacti, so a new species from Alaska. So the second task is to assess the hypothermic stress resistance of bumblebees. So bumblebees are endo-heterothermic insects, and bumblebees are able to maintain a temperature independent of the external temperature thanks to a countercurrent heat exchanger and heat shunt mechanisms. So to assess the hyperthermic stress resistance, we set up a new experimental device where we measure the time before heat stupor as criteria to assess the hypothermic stress resistance. So an insect is said to be entering in heat stupor when it falls on its back, it's unable to return and loses its normal reflexes. And bumblebees are characterized by muscular spasm at the extremities of the legs. And we choose the temperature of 40 degrees. And this temperature corresponds to a heat wave temperature, as the definition of heat wave is a minimum period of 2 consecutive days with a daytime temperature above 40 degrees Celsius. So thanks to Interact program, we have collected many of bumblebees from different Arctic stations in Alaska, Canada, West Canada, East Canada, north of Scandinavia, and in Russia. And we have tested more than 40 bumblebee species, and not all species are equal phase 2 hyperthermic stress. So we have a gradient of heat resistance with the most resistant species with, for example, the invasive one, Bombus terrestris. After we have temperate species. And finally, the most sensitive is Arctic and boreal species with a time before heat stupor approximately 20 minutes compared to more resistant species with more than 10 hours in your device. So for several species, for 6 species, we have assessed the intraspecific variability. So for temperate, Arctic, and boreal species, Bombus polaris, Ionellus, Laponicus, Clutarum, Lucurum, and Terrestris. And the main result is that there is no significant differences between allopatric population of a same species. So inside a species, the hypothermic stress resistance is very constant. So the influence of micro-adaptation is negligible in this bumblebee species. So to explain the variability, the interspecific variability of hypothermic stress resistance, we have performed a characteristic mapping to explore the diversity of time before heat stupor inside the bumblebee phylogeny, and we have not a strong effect of phylogeny to explain the time before heat stupor, to explain the heat stress resistance. So we explore also 3 different parameters to explain the low or the high heat resistance. So the fresh and dry weights are not significant impacts. The fresh and weight and the dry weight of the body have not significant effect on time before heat stupor, but the main temperature of the sample station is positively correlated with the time before heat stupor. So Mediterranean species have a higher heat stress resistance than temperate species, than montane, boreal, and finally the polar species have the lesser heat stress resistance. So the third task of our project is the study of fertility and attractiveness after heat exposition. And for that, we have selected two model species. The resistant one, three model species, sorry. The resistant one, Bombus terrestris, living in temperate and Mediterranean regions, and two more sensitive bumblebee species living in boreal and Arctic region, Bombus ionellus and Bombus magnus. So for the time before stupor, we see that there is a large difference between Bombus terrestris and the two other Arctic species. So concerning attractiveness, we analyze the composition, the qualitative and quantitative composition of pheromones, and we see that after heat stress, there is no effect of heat stress on pheromones of Bombus terrestris. So there is no significant differences between heat stressed group and control group in green. But for sensitive species, Bombus ionellus, these two groups are well distinct. So heat stress have a significant effect on sensitive species. And this result were confined by histological analysis, where for Bombus terrestris, there is no differences in the gland before and after heat stress, while for ionellus, the glands were collapsed with modification in production of pheromones. So the other part is the reproductive system. So in bumblebees, males, species are mainly monogamous. There are a stock of spermatozoa for male from birth, and sperm count is different between between the species, and there is one copulation per male, and in female, sperm storage is in the spermatheca. So we have also three model species: Ionellus, Magnus, and Terrestris, and same comment for attractiveness. There is no significant differences for Bombus terrestris, the resistant one. There is no differences in sperm motility and in degradation of DNA inside the head of spermatozoa, while for sensitive species, Bombus ionellus and Bombus magnus, there are dramatically increase of sperm mortality and increase in DNA degradation of the sperm. So the take-home message of our project is that climatic stress have an impact of bumblebee population. Gradual stress have an impact on phenotypical traits, migration of population, and induce shift in distribution range of species, while extreme events such as heat wave induce a high sensibility and mortality of bumblebee species. There are high inter and low intra-specific variability among bumblebee species, and heat waves have a physiological impact on male fertility and attractiveness for Arctic and boreal species, and the resistance of heat stress are potentially related to the flexibility of the protein profile. And this task is in progress, and normally we must have a result very soon concerning the impact on protein profile variation after its exposition. So what can we do? Although the current view is pessimistic and our potential for action against a heat wave seems to be limited, we can act indirectly by defining a robust taxonomic framework and fighting on other decline factors to limit the synergetic effects. So ensure access to high quality diets, preserving microhabitat and refuge, such as Tulik Field Station, where the diversity of bumblebee species is very well, maintain a sufficiently connected network of habitats, and of course, limiting the use of pesticide products in crops. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Baptiste. It was really interesting, and I actually have many questions, but I would first like to give the audience a chance to make questions to you. If anyone has, please open your microphone and just ask. Okay.
Can I have a little question?
Yes,
Sorry.
please.
First of all, thank you ever so much for an excellent presentation. I've been working in the Arctic for more than 20 years and I've never thought of the bumblebees, but I will certainly have a look out for them now in the field. It's really, really cool. I was thinking you were mentioning that you have made those heat resistance tests, etc., in the lab. You know, the growing season is of course getting longer in the Arctic and things like that. Have you looked at how that potentially can affect the bumblebees?
On what? On the growing of species?
Well, the growing season, how does that affect the bumblebees? Is that something positive? I mean, I guess that there should be flowers out for a longer period then, for example, but have you seen any impact on it?
Yeah, in fact, we used only males because males are most constant behavior, and the life of males is very short, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So we try to maximize the number of tested males to have a large variability for statistical tests. Yeah, so we try to take into account a maximum of factor to explain its resistance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, then I could make a question. You explained to us how challenging it is to do this taxonomy on bumblebees and then to differentiate even between the species, because there's so much variation within one species in how the individuals look. And so my question is about that. Like, is it even possible to differentiate many of the species visually, or do you always or often need to do that genetic testing to find out which species is a certain individual?
Yes, it's an excellent question. There are a identification grid for North America, but for the group in Arctic, Alpinobombus and Pyrobombus, it's very difficult to identify species with color pattern. The large experience is needed to identify bumblebee species without DNA or semiochemical criteria. So to be sure that we have a good species in hands, for all tested specimen, I perform DNA extraction and pheromone analysis to be sure that we have the good species in hands. Yeah.
Then my second question is a kind of a practical one about the adventure during the fieldwork. Like, how is it so that the bumblebees, they are not so aggressive as, for example, wasps and so, or
No,
is
it's not aggressive.
do
No.
they ever sting you when you're doing collecting them?
No, bumblebees is not aggressive bees. It's a quiet animals, yeah. And for example, in Alaska, it's very easy to collect bumblebees because we have plenty of epilobium. The English word of epilobium is fireweeds. It's possible, yeah, fireweeds too, yeah. So it's very easy to collect bumblebees, yeah.
How do you collect them? Do you just catch them with your hands, or do you have a trap, or how do you do it?
So for males, we can collect specimen with hands, but it's not very easy. So we use a net to collect bumblebees. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments to Baptiste? If not, I wish to thank you once more for your really excellent presentation and for the excellent work and science you and Pierre have been doing with support from Transnational Access. And now I start sharing my screen, and we take a quick look at the program, and then we'll see our next steps yeah, thank you. Let's see. So we have now heard Baptiste's presentation, and next we are going to hear one more TA user project highlight, and that's going to be about annual rings from far north to better understand long-term growth drivers of Juniperus communis, the most widespread woody species of the Northern Hemisphere. And we are going to have Angela Luisa Prendin from University of Padua in Italy presenting us. Welcome, Angela, and please start sharing your screen and your camera, and open your microphone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. So let's try. So can you see my monitor?
Yes,
screen?
it looks very good.
Okay.
And we can hear you very well as also.
Perfect. So first of all, thank you Interact for having invited me and us as a team to this meeting. I'm mainly interested in structural and functional relationship and also structural responsive of plant to climate and environment. And this is the reason why I was involved in the Arnold project last year. And this is the reason why now, today I'm going to describe you what we have done so far. So I'm starting describing a little bit the background of our project, and later on I will pass to the main body of the project. So as everybody knows, the mean annual temperature has increased worldwide and overall in the last decade, but the ecosystem at the northernmost and uppermost limit of the woody plant distribution have experienced so far a larger change and increasing at a faster rate compared to the global average. And in this image, you can see that in the upper part for each stripes that correspond to the mean annual temperature of a year. And if you follow the different stripes, you can cover time series. In the upper part of the image, it corresponds to the global one. And on the bottom, it corresponds to, for example, in this case, the temperature, the mean annual temperature trend for North Asia, now for North Europe, now for North America. And here it's quite impressive what is happening so far at very high latitudes, such as Greenland in this case. Therefore, climate change is observed and predict, of course, to profoundly affect the structure and the functioning of the Arctic in terms of sub, low, and high Arctic, but also of the alpine ecosystem that are mainly, so at least the woody species that are characterizing this environment are shrubs, and we are talking about tall shrubs, but also small shrubs. And such as climate change effects are already visible and they can be quantified In particular, this type of vegetation are facing a general increasing in terms of also in filling of new regeneration in the existing patches, increasing in the primary and secondary growth. So they are growing more, both in height and diameter, and advancing also in both latitudinal but also altitudinal shrub line. And this increasing in growth is also evident from satellite images, of course. And this is the case, for example, of the NDVI signal, so the Vegetation Productivity Index, measured in the Tour Glacier in France, and over the last 3 decades. And you can see that the positive trends that are derived are generally interpreted as in situ increase in vegetation height, biomass, but also abundance. Satellite measures from the Arctic, so high latitude in this case, indicate also a widespread greening. However, in this case, the vegetation is not responding homogeneously everywhere. So you can see that there are areas in which there is more or less no effect, other in which there is a greening, so higher biomass production probably, and other ones in which you can observe a browning. And therefore, probably there are several other factors that could have determined or could determine the growth. And this is, for example, an image showing the recent results of a study that took place in the Alps, where the main results show that at least in the last decades, it was not the temperature the main driver for juniperus growth, but instead the winter precipitation, both in terms of amount, but also in terms of persistence. As we can imagine, and probably from today also we'll know that shrubs can be a very, very long living organism, both in the Arctic and alpine tundra. And Juniperus communis, such as in this example, can represent one of the most living species in this environment. And sometimes these shrubs could also reach impressive size, such as in this example, where I was holding a piece of juniperus from Greenland. And some other times you could also discover such as long living wood material. Obviously is that wood now, and this trap in artifacts. In this case, they are Greenlandic statues, always from Greenland. This is the reason why Arctic and alpine shrubs, being a so long-living organism, allow through their annual growth ring sequence the retrospective analysis of the past responses both to environment but also to climate variability. And they allow, therefore, to build time series properly dated, but has been shown to be a promising environmental and climatic proxy. In terms of they can provide basically the measurement of the ring width can provide information, for example, about past temperature trends, as well as precipitation patterns, both some rain and snow, ice sheet, but also snow regimes. So this is the reason why they are extremely important overall in the region where the long instrumental records are not available. Now I'm passing to the main project and starting on describing what is Arnold about. So with Arnold, we aim to extend up north so therefore in Arctic region, both subarctic and low Arctic, the already well-established network of juniperus that is the long-living and very widely distributed species that currently extend from Pyrenees. So you can see the yellow point in the bottom part of the picture, to the Urals up north. The green map represents the range distribution of the Juniperus, where you can see the yellow points that represent the sites from where data have already been analyzed and published. The blue dots represent the samples, the sites where the samples have been collected during the summer 2018, and we are now finalizing the analysis. And the red dots represent the sites very close to Interact stations that we have visited last summer, for summer 2019. The second aim of Arnold project is to assess the climate sensitivity of Juniperus and to use the derived proxy in terms of both annual growing for trying at least to attempt a climate reconstruction, but therefore to increase the mechanistic understand of the plant growth. So to get insight into the past, but also to use those information to better predict the future vegetation dynamics of that species. So for this reason, Arnold aims well fit with the ongoing long-term terrestrial ecosystem monitoring programs that are running at the moment at the Faroe Island Natural Investigation, Sudurnes Science and Learning Centers, and at the Greening Institute of Natural Resources in Greenland. So these are the three sites that we have visited last summer. I'm starting telling you about our experience in Svinøy. So the most abundant Juniperus population of the Faroe Island is located in Svinøy. Svinøy is a quite isolated island located in northeast of the Faroe archipelago. We reach it by boat, as there are no bridges, no tunnels connected it with the other island. And in general, it was not very easy to find the Juniperus because of the deep browsing of the ships there. And sometimes also we had quite difficult time because the mist will not made it a little bit more difficult to find the way. So this is the reason why in general at the forest the paths are marked with chains. So heap of stones set up as a landmark showing the way so that we don't get lost. And this is the reason why in some cases we contributed, let's say, to increase their size and also the frequency, because due to the foggy, we could not see each other while sampling, but we were just standing 10 meters apart. But I have to say that we also have been extremely lucky because we also face a very, very good weather that allowed us to sample in total 92 individuals in Svinøy. And in this case, in this site, because the population was not very huge, we just decided to sample the site branches closest to the root collar to do not damage too much the plant and avoid killing the plant. So despite this, we also sampled several dead individuals at the root collar in this case, because the plant was already dead. So the preliminary results show that the oldest individual that we have found so far in Svinøy is 170 years. So here you can see a graph. In the x-axis there is a time scale, so a year series, and then in the y-axis there are information about the mirroring width, so the size of the growing basically, and the different colors represent the different individuals that have been measured so far. we also moved in another island, Streymoy. Streymoy is the largest and most populated island in the Faroes. Here we collected just few individuals because there were not so many. And also in this case, we just sampled the side branches. And the oldest individual in this case has 75 years. Finally, thanks to Magnus Gard, that from the Faroense Museum of Natural History, offer us the possibility of sampling the dead individuals that have been stored in his archive. So in total we sample 15 individuals, and in the oldest one we have measured 140 years. Now from the Faroe Island we move slightly to Iceland. Here we arrived in Akureyri in the north of Iceland, where we managed to sample almost 100 individuals of Juniperus. Also in this case, we sample alive and dead material. And the cool thing is that we managed with one alive material to go back till 288 years ago. So the oldest one was quite old individual. We do not know exactly if it's older compared to the monumentary Juniperus in Tornskov Valley, but it's a quite old one, let's say. Talking about the size, it was not very big one and not so impressive as the monumentary one in the south of Iceland. And it is still alive. We then moved down to west of Iceland, where we collected 35 individuals close to Keflavik, where the older ones that we have sampled corresponded to 112 years. And finally, close to Keflavik, but in the lava field, very close to the Blue Lagoon, we sampled other 55 individuals. And the oldest one resulted 163 years old. From Iceland now we move to Greenland. And at a walking distance from the Greenland Institute of Natural Resources in Nuuk, that is the capital city, we managed to collect other 120 individuals, both alive and dead material. And we have to say that we have been very, very lucky last summer, because in August, basically the mosquito net was practically not needed. So we managed to sample without any mask or nothing, because there was nothing that was flying at the moment. There, in Nuuk, we have found the oldest individual of our Arnold expedition, and it was 304 years old and still alive, as you can see from the image. And it was, in this case, we also sampled one of the branches closest to the root collar. So the individual is still alive there. And as you can see, in general, we found several individuals that are quite old in that site, as you can see from the graph. So which are the plans for the future? First of all, we need to manage to finish all the preparation of the samples and the measurements of the tree ring, following different ready for each discs. And secondly, we need to perform the cross dating of the samples that we have collected. That is a very important step, because the absolute dating of the wood material taken both from the alive and dead material can allow us to extend the chronology back in time. And it's absolutely important to find the proper position of each time series of ring measured. And this is important because having so long living in individuals that cross-date together very well, and that probably can correlate very well with some, as you can see, some climatic factors, such as in this case, the temperature of June, July, August, so the growing season temperature. Having this information, then you can basically allow for developing a climate reconstruction. And the cool thing about about shrub ring data, grow ring data, is that the information that you can get, it is at the annual resolution. Finally, the last plan is to extend the sampling collection also in Scandinavia. And this is the reason why we have applied again to the Interact, the transactional access call with Arnold 2.0, and we have been granted. So first of all, we would like to thank Interact for having given us the possibility of such a great experience and the possibility of visiting such as great research stations. Then I would like to thank in particularly Liz Mortensen from the Faroe Island Geological Survey, Magnus Gard, the reference person for the National Museum at the Faroe Island, Hanna Maria Christiansdottir and Solveig Runar from the Sudurnes Science and Learning Center, and finally Katrin Rondrup from the Greenland Institute of Natural Resources for their availability and for having helped us a lot, providing us all the logistic support that was needed. And finally, thank you all for listening. Thank you. If you have any question, just ask.
Thank you very, very much, Angela. Now we have some time for questions. Please, if you have anything to ask, you can chat it, or you can just open your microphone and ask. Angela? I would have, Elke, do you have a question?
Hi,
yeah,
hi, this is Elke Spiesen. I have a question, maybe I missed this, regarding permission to cut and transport the material from country to country. Was it easy or difficult? Or?
So basically we had the permission from Greenland. So basically you have to ask months earlier in advance. First of all, the permission to sample the material and then to export the material. For the Faroe Island, we had the permission from the Faroense Jorefengi Center of Sampling, and from Iceland also we had the permission from the Sudurnes Center. But the most difficult one to obtain was the one for the Greenland country.
Okay, thank you.
Sauli, you raised your hand. Please go ahead and ask the question.
Yep, thank you very much. Hi, Angela. Thanks for your presentation. It's very interesting. I was just going to ask you whether you use carbon dating to kind of date your annual rings, or how did you count them?
So basically,
I'm sorry if I missed it.
No, it's a good question. So basically, having the material alive, so we and having collecting a lot of samples, we also young material. So basically, we already are quite sure about the year of the last ring because we have cut it. So when having an overlapping of the measuring width of the several years, then basically you can build this with chronology, so this ring width time series, and having a lot of samples that match help us basically to build the chronology for the site. But I have to tell that working with the juniperus is not one of the easiest things, because it happens that there are a lot of wedging rings. So basically, we normally, so if this is the section, we normally go for measuring several already, just to be sure that we are considering all the rings, because in some cases the species does not produce a ring in that year, so we have to add missing rings.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions to move on? I would like to comment to you, Angela. This is about science communication, actually. You probably know, and probably many of our webinar participants know, that we are hosting this blog site, the Interact Arctic Research blogs. And then we also have this Instagram account,
yes,
at EU_Interact. And you chose the option to communicate your science in the form of reporting to our Instagram account. And I have to say that I really, really enjoyed seeing those and sharing then your Instagram reports and the photos. I think it was a wonderful way to communicate your findings as when you were working in the field. So I just want to thank you for that as well. And I hope that the others would visit our Instagram account and see actually the nice reports and pictures that you submitted there, and hopefully also many other scientists would realize and utilize this way of science communication.
So thank you very much, Annele. We also enjoyed a lot, both in the field but also in communicating our.
Yeah, it brings perhaps a little bit different aspect then to the making
it's also
the field
nice
work.
to look at them now when we cannot move anywhere. So yeah,
yes,
it's nice.
Yes, yes.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And let's take a quick look now on the program. Here. Now we heard Angela's nice presentation, and now it's time for break. So we are finishing the first session, Interact to the Legacy, a little bit ahead of time. And that gives us 15 minutes more for our break, for some coffee, for some lunch, a little bit of rest in the middle of the program. And we return back here at 12:30 CET, Central European Time. So in 1 hour and 15 minutes, let's convene back, and then we will continue with the second session about Interact 3, the future, and learn about our future ambition and plans for the next years to come. Thank you so much for attending this first session, and I look forward to meeting you again online in 1 hour and 15 minutes. And you can simply click the same link and join again the webinar then, or you can just mute yourself, mute the microphone and mute the camera, and stay connected online over the break time. Thank you, and see you in 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Thank you, Hannele.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So hi everyone, my name is Saulia. I am a PhD student at Manchester Metropolitan University, and I was lucky enough to obtain Interact grants in the past. So thank you very much for inviting me to give this talk. And first about myself a bit. As I said, I'm a PhD student at Manchester Metropolitan University. I'm also working for UK Polar Network. And my main research is quantifying and characterizing organic carbon in newly developed soils following glacier retreat in northern latitudes. So my main research focus is studying glacial organic carbon, which is held within glacial ice, subglacial sediment, proglacial sediment, soils, also is transported by meltwater streams. And generally, the current global warming will result in retreat of glaciers, which will potentially expose and release this stored glacial organic carbon, and there's a risk of degradation of organic carbon, and it would produce gases such as CO2 and methane through different processes. And my main focus here is studying newly exposed nutrient-rich glacial landscapes that may develop into soils and different ecosystems. So in those pictures, you can see how you, in the first and second one, as you move away from
Saule, this is Hannele. I'm really sorry to interrupt. I don't think we can see your slides. Can you press share?
Yeah.
It's on the lower part of the screen. Does it ask you to share your screen?
Yeah. Is it work? Can you see it?
Because I cannot see your slides. I can only see you. Margareta, can you let us know if you
No,
can see some?
we cannot see.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
Okay.
Now something is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, now it is starting, Saule.
Okay, I'm very sorry about this. I'll
No
restart.
problem.
I'm sorry.
Because
yeah.
it was only during when you presented yourself, and then it was, of course, wonderful to see you. Okay, now we can see your slides. Everything
Okay,
is okay. Please continue. Thank you.
I'm very sorry. Okay, so skip this part. So basically here I'm just talked about organic carbon a bit. Hopefully you understood that. And on this slide, I would like to show you soil development in front of glaciers. So in the first two pictures, you can see how you move away. When you move away from a glacier, that a quite barren landscape turns into more vegetated one. So I'm interested in understanding the main source of organic carbon in soils that's exposed after glacial retreat, and how this soil develops as you move away downstream from the glacial front. So my main study site is Orafojokul ice cap in Iceland. But as I said, I was able to expand my study sites thanks to the Interact grant. So I visited Tarfala research station in Sweden in 2018 and Zackenberg station in Greenland in summer 2019. So first off, a bit about the Tarfala research station in Sweden. This is a shot of a station from the outside. I was lucky enough to see a good weather there a couple of days. So about the station, I believe it's owned and run by the Department of Physical Geography of Stockholm University in Sweden. It's located above 1 kilometer in the high alpine Kebnekaise mountain, northern Sweden, and the catchment varies from 700 to 2100 meters. And the valley itself includes several glaciers, including Storglaciaren, which is the most studied glacier in the world. So generally, the station has very nice facilities with a kitchen, with a cook. There's dining room, living room, and what was very important for me is a lab facility. Unfortunately, I didn't take any great pictures of it, but it generally shows that you are welcome to set up your lab equipment. They also had the ovens where I could dry my soil samples, and I was able to borrow a couple of things from the station as well. So the main glaciers I focused on were Storglaciaren and Isfjoldsglaciaren. Both glaciers, Storglaciaren, as I previously mentioned, is quite well studied, and Isfjoldsglaciaren is very different. It's cold-based, I believe, and also I was able to visit other sites, Kipnepakteglaciaren, and the other one that I'm afraid I can't really pronounce. So this is a picture of the Storglaciaren on top of it, and then a view of the Isfjoldsglaciaren, and then a general view of the valley. Then the second station is Zackenberg Research Station, and again here, as was previously mentioned, I was very lucky with the weather again, and I was able to not use any mosquito nets as well, which was very, very nice. So about the station, it abbreviates as ZERO, which is Zackenberg Ecological Research Operations. It's located in northeast Greenland. I believe that's the furthest point I've been to in the Arctic. And the station is owned by the government of Greenland. However, it's operated by the Department of Biosciences of Aarhus University, Denmark. And the station is open during the summertime, so from May to October. And I believe it can host up to 24 people at the same time. So again, a couple shots of the station. So a very nice living room, dining room with a cook. Again, lab facilities, which for me was very helpful because I had to filter a lot of meltwater stream samples. And because of the polar bear threat, we had to get a rifle training, which for someone like me was a very exciting experience. A bit scary, but yeah. So again, a bit about the station. So here I was mainly interested in visiting A.P. Olsen Land ice cap and one of the small outlet glaciers that drains into a meltwater stream feeding into Storsodal Lake and then outflowing into Zackenberg River. So that's about a 50-kilometer transect. And the reason it was very interesting is because the area was deglaciated about 8,000 years ago. So if compared to Sweden, the land has been deglaciated and therefore the soils have been developing there for quite a bit of time. And also it's an area of continuous permafrost. And again, here are a couple snapshots of the area itself. It was very warm, which I guess is not a very good thing. In August, it was around say 17, 18 degrees. So one of the challenges of the fieldwork doing in Zackenberg as opposed to Tarfala was that the glacier, as I said, was 50 kilometers away from the station. So we had to either stay at several hunter huts, which was an amazing experience. They had a guest book. Not too many people stopped there, but we were able to fill in some guest books. And also we were able to camp on the site to get to the glacier. And yeah, it was a very interesting experience. So as I mentioned, I work with meltwater sediment samples, but today I would like to talk a bit more about soil and sediment samples. And the reason I would like to talk about it is because soils are a bit more rich in organic compounds as opposed to meltwater streams that are very fast flowing, and therefore their chemistry, their microbiology is very, very, it's difficult to pinpoint the source, while with soils and sediments, depending on where you collect your soils from, you can kind of tell how it develops. So for today's presentation, I'd like to focus on organic compounds. So first off, I was looking at CN concentrations, and after that, picking a couple sites to look at what's called the BHP in order to trace the organic carbon source. And then this is linked with microbial communities as well. So here's a map of the Tarfala Valley in Sweden. So the site is over here, the research station, and then this is the valley itself with the main glacier, Storglaciaren, Isfjellglaciaren, and then a couple other around. And here I collected some soil sediments that are green crosses, and then sediment samples, and also ice samples. And which was interesting because I did a similar analysis in Iceland before doing the Swedish one, is that the soil development here is quite low. So organic carbon concentrations, as you can tell, a lot of them don't have any values, and that's because they were very difficult to trace. So it's less than 0.1%. And then some of the sites actually had a bit higher organic concentrations. And as you can see, I kind of tried to take it down the valley to kind of see how the soil would develop. And then a similar thing was done in Greenland. So here I'm showing you mostly soil samples, but I must mention that sediment samples were quite well developed as well. So here you can see that organic carbon concentrations were much, much higher as opposed to the Tarfala Valley. And I think it's because this area, as I mentioned earlier, has been deglaciated for quite some time. So the soil was able to develop over time a bit more. And again, here it's kind of from the glacial meltwater stream down into the Sodal Lake and the Zackenberg River into the fjord. And then just to mention, this is not an Interact site, but again, I'll be doing some comparisons. So those are my sites in Iceland, Svinafellsjökull and Virkisjökull glaciers. So here again, I collected some soil sediment and ice samples, and I tried to do it again down the glacier, starting from proglacial lakes down the stream for both glaciers, and they're a bit different systems as well. So it was very interesting to kind of trace the organic carbon. And as you can see, the values here are higher than the ones in Sweden, but lower than the ones in Greenland. So 3 different sites, 3 completely different systems. The only thing that's the same is that it's both glaciated lands. So next, after doing organic carbon analysis, I was interested in BHPs. So BHP stands for bacteria hopanipoliols, and this is a group of membrane lipids, and different BHPs are produced by different bacteria, which allows you to use BHPs as biomarker of bacterial presence. So different BHPs show different bacterial presence, basically. Another very interesting thing here is you can use R-soil index, which is a proxy that's based on relative abundance of soil marker BHPs versus BHTs. And BHT is a commonly produced BHP, but it's not directly indicative of any specific bacteria. However, it's produced everywhere, therefore it can be used as a general guide to see how you can calculate this R-soil index. In this graphs at the bottom, I'm showing the BHPs, which is biomarker bacterial presence, and the profiles at the bottom. So the one on the left is from Iceland to different glaciers, but it's basically moving from glacial front down the stream. So basal ice samples, proglacial lake, moraines, and down the river, and same for Virkisjökull, and then the same kind of profile for Sweden. So the glacier, meltwater stream, a proglacial lake, couple moraines, and then the same one for Storglaciaren. Unfortunately, my lab got closed down before I was able to retrieve some of the data for Zackenberg Valley. Therefore, I'm very sorry, but I wouldn't be able to present the data, but I would be expecting that it would show the same trend. So here at the bottom graphs, you can see how biomarkers of bacterial presence basically increase as you move away from a glacier. So here I have samples from ice, from lake, and then from a little ice age moraine in Iceland, and then a moraine that was dated to be 2,500 years old. And then for Virkisjökull, I have a young moraine and old moraine, and as you can see in both profiles, the biomarker increases as you move away from a glacial front. And then the same trend can be seen in Tarfala Valley. So again, here we have basal ice, meltwater streams, lake, bank of the lake, and then the main stream. So this is all soil samples, not sediment samples, because sediment samples didn't really show much. But again, here you can see how the amount of BHPs increases as you move away from a glacier. And then same for the Storglaciaren, and actually I couldn't find any biomarkers in meltwater streams there at all. So it's very undeveloped soil at the moment. And then at the top, you can see the R-soil index, which shows a relative abundance of soil marker BHPs versus BHTs. So again, as you move away from a glacier, you can see how the R-soil index increases both in Icelandic glaciers and in Sweden. Actually, I really like this graph in Sweden because it shows very clean kind of a trend. So a very similar thing here. So a bit of a breakdown of BHPs, and it's BHX, which is BHT, amino sugar, and then the most interesting one is the soil biomarkers. And this is what we see at the top in dark blue. And again, as you can see, as you move away from a glacier, the amount or the concentration of soil biomarkers increases. So it's true for Svinnafellsjökull Glacier in Iceland, true for Virkisjökull in Iceland, and very much true for Tarfala Valley in Sweden. And as I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, the Stor Glacier and soils were not well developed, so I couldn't really find much there. But you can see the general trend of soil marker concentration increasing. So my findings are that total organic carbon concentrations are much, much higher in soil samples as opposed to ice and sediment samples. And this basically shows that organic carbon develops in soils rather than in sediment samples. Next is that total concentration of BHPs is much higher in moraines and river and lake banks as opposed to ice and meltwater stream sediments, which is similar with organic carbon. And this shows that there is a much higher bacterial presence in moraine and in bank soils. And then that the development of soil over time shows that both the total BHPs and our soil index go up with age of moraine. So soil markers increase downstream as you move away from glacier to moraine. And that just shows that soils develop over time after being exposed. And finally, I will be tying those results to my microbial sequencing. And at the moment, I was able to get the DNA concentrations that showed that the DNA concentration is generally much, much higher in soils as opposed to sediment samples again, which shows that there's a bacterial presence in soils. So for the future, once I'm back at university, I'm planning to finish the organic compounds for Greenland and send off my samples for sequencing in order to tie all of this together and run some other extra analysis. To finish my research conclusions here is that soil and ecosystem development in front of retreating glaciers leads to the buildup of new terrestrial organic carbon stores. However, erosion of organic carbon by glacial meltwater might actually highly affect the estimates of glacial organic carbon. So you see high organic carbon presence in meltwater streams. However, it's difficult to say whether that's actually coming from the glacier itself or whether it's just draining the well-developed soil areas. So future glacier retreat might actually increase terrestrial organic carbon productivity and carbon export. However, this has a risk of acidic biological production downstream. Now to the benefits that I gained from accessing two different stations. So as I mentioned earlier, my main study site was Vatnajökull Ice Cap. However, thanks to the grant, I was able to visit Tarfala and Zackenberg through the course of 2 years. And my main benefits from visiting those sites was that I was able to broaden my research area. Actually, because of how Greenlandic sites have been developing for quite some time, I was able to shift my focus mainly from Iceland to Greenland to see how the soil develops over a longer transect. So to conclude, the access to Interact TE stations can shape your research, can give you more opportunities in developing research questions. So studying just meltwater streams, I was able to kind of broaden up my research and also be interested in soils. And as you can see, this is a very interesting topic to look at. And the similar research has been done in permafrost regions, but however, nobody really looked at glacial sites. So it's a very interesting research question. So thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to give the talk. And I'd like to thank my field assistants, so Maria, who joined me in trip to Sweden, and Anne, who joined me in trip to Greenland. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saule. I have to say you have done tremendous amount of work with your study, and it was very impressive to see all the results that you were already able to present. Would you have any questions or comments to Saule before we move into our next presentations?
I have a short question, if that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for a very interesting presentation. I used to work at the Tafla station in the 90s, so this is lovely to be going back there, even if it's just, you know, on photos. So I just was wondering, you took a lot of samples that you brought back. Did you have any problems with the transporting samples and things like that? Because in general, we do have some problems, or in many cases, we do have problems. Did you encounter anything, or was it just very smooth, or how did it work?
So thank you very much for your question. I think my main problem was actually trying to bring the samples back, and I visited several sites. So my first one was Iceland in 2018. It was before I went to Tarfala. So I learned my mistake there. I tried to ship it by DHL. And this is something that I learned. Apparently, every country has their own DHL branch, and they don't really work together. So my samples got stuck, and I was very, very worried because they're supposed to be cold, especially for the microbial analysis. And after that, I actually started bringing my samples with me. So the biggest problem would be at the airport, people asking why I had those samples with me and things like that. But I also always had my permits printed. I had a very, very big cool box with lots of this mini frozen packets that you put in to keep the samples cold. And then thanks to those drying ovens at the station, a lot of soil actual samples I was able to dry, and it was easier to bring back with me. But yeah, it was quite a challenge, but not in terms of permit or anything, but just in terms of being able to bring it back safely without losing anything, without breaking any vials and so on.
Thank you very much.
So this is Hannele again speaking. Yeah, I'm kind of detail a little bit or add to Margareta's question. So what you did at the research station is that once you had collected the samples, you did the preliminary sample handling there to prepare them, yeah, and then you did the full analysis then back at home, of course.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions to Saule? It was very interesting also, I think for me at least, to see the pictures from the stations, to see how they look, because they were also, of course, very different, the locations where you were staying. Did you find any differences in the station cultures? I guess there was the safety difference between Zackenberg and Tarfala, for example, because the polar bear danger in Zackenberg and so on. Was there many differences between the station operations or how you were instructed for the field work?
The stations were different. I think the main difference was actually the remote location of Zackenberg. So because it was so far up north, there was actually no internet. We were able to send off email, and then they would bring back emails to us, but generally we did not have a lot of internet access. So in that sense, it was a bit different. And then as for Tarfala, it was nicer in terms of field work because the valley is quite small and it takes only about half hour to an hour depending which glacier you want to visit. But there are 4 different glaciers in one valley. So you just go, you collect your samples, you come back to a very cozy, nice environment. While in Greenland, as I was showing pictures of field work, we actually had to go camping, and also it was just the 2 of us, and there was a bit of mental, I would say, like scareness. We didn't see any polar bears, but we had to be very, very careful, and we couldn't really take shifts sleeping as well. So we had to just be, you know, very on our toes the whole time. But it was different in terms of the safety, I guess, yeah, and also in terms of the scale. So Greenland was just absolutely huge, and not what I was expecting to see, because both Icelandic and Swedish glaciers are quite small, and the scale is much smaller.
It seemed like you had a long transect, 50 kilometers in Zackenberg. How many days did it take from you to go through that transect and sample? Did you have to stay like 3 days on the journey, or?
Yeah, actually, we had 3 different journeys because we tried to access this from one site first, where they had those 2 different trapping huts. and stayed at them. But then, unfortunately, we were not able to cross the river because we were very tired. We still had very heavy backpacks, and it was quite slippery, and we were very afraid that we would twist our ankle and be stuck in the field. So we actually had to take a safer route and be camping outside. So that was our longest journey. It was 3 days. Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments to Saule at this stage? If not, thank you ever so much for this very good and interesting presentation. And we will go further in the program. And I will now share my screen to show you where we are in the program and what's going to be happening next. So what's going to happen next is that I'm going to actually give a presentation. You're going to hear a little bit about transnational and virtual access, about our new innovations and the way forward in the next years. And most of you probably know that I'm the Transnational Access Coordinator in Interact, have been since 2011. And in this Interact 3 that started January 2020 and will go on until end of 2023, I will be also leading the Transnational Access and Virtual Access work package. And I work here at Thule Institute at the University of Oulu in Finland, and now working from my home office here by the Oulu River. And in Interact 3, in this new consortium, new EU-funded consortium that we have, this transnational remote and virtual access work package, it is number work package 3. And our aim in the work package, in all the activities we have, is to offer free access in 3 different modalities, either as physical, transnational, remote access, or virtual access to world-class infrastructures in the Arctic and beyond for excellent science. So that's kind of the key concept and key aim in everything that we do, is that we have these wonderful infrastructures around the Arctic. We have 53 stations offering access in Interact 3. We have 33 stations offering remote access and 32 stations offering virtual access. And we really want to the science community to be able to utilize all the facilities and all the wonderful opportunities these stations and our virtual access infrastructure has to conduct really world-class excellent science. That is behind everything we are doing and planning to do in our work package. As I already mentioned, we have 53 stations that are going to offer physical transnational access in Interact 3, started in January 2020. And then 33 of those stations are also offering remote access. As Margareta Johansson, our main coordinator, already explained to you, that remote access means that the scientists themselves are not physically traveling to the station from their home institution to do the fieldwork, but it is instead the station and the station staff that is conducting the study for the scientists based on their research plan. And then the third modality of access that we offer during the next 4 years, 3.5 years, is virtual access, and that will happen at 32 stations. So that means free access to data and metadata from these stations. And on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see our infrastructure matrix. That will kind of show you the variety of the stations mapped against the different societal challenges that we are focusing on in Interact 3. So we have these 6 societal challenges that we're focusing on. You can see those on the left-hand side of the matrix. And then you can see the large variety of environmental envelopes, ecozones, where the Interact stations are located. From high Arctic and tundra stations with continuous permafrost to North Atlantic and temperate forest stations. And each of those small numbers you can see in the cells of the matrix represent different stations. And so this infrastructure matrix basically illustrates to you which are the stations located in each of the environmental envelopes that are the best suited, that offer the best possible opportunities for the scientists to focus and do research with these societal challenges. So that's the kind of the idea of this infrastructure matrix. I will talk a little bit more about this infrastructure matrix later in my presentation and tell you how we are going to utilize, how we are going to offer it for scientists to be used in selection of the best possible station for their study. This I'm not going to talk very much about anymore because Margareta already told you in a very nice manner what are the concepts of physical, transnational and remote access and virtual access. But I can only mention the volume of the access that we are going to offer in Interact 3. So for physical transnational access, we are going to offer 5,800 approximately person days of access, and that constitutes 90% of the total amount of access days that we are offering in the 4-year funding period. For remote access, we will offer altogether 670 days, and that is approximately 10% of the total number of days. And overall, for transnational access, that sums up at 6,500 days of access. And this constitutes 80% of our work package budget. The total budget for our work package is 5.1 million euros in 4 years. And for virtual access to these 32 stations, the amount of budget is about approximately 20% of the overall work package budget of 5.1 million euros. Then I'll move forward to the innovations in the transnational remote and virtual access work package. And what we want to do with these innovations and with these developments taking place in Interact 3 is that we really want to take the access to the next level. We have been very happy and very proud as well, I think, about what we have achieved in Interact 1 and Interact 2 regarding transnational and virtual access, as Margareta already told you about in her presentation in the first session. But we don't want to stay where we are now. We want to move forward and we want to improve. Access provision is very much a service provision as well. We have 3 different clients, if you want to think. We have the European Commission, of course. We have the science community, the researchers, and then we have the stations. And here in the TA coordination, we want to do our best to develop our practices, our processes, and the overall access provision so that everyone will benefit and ultimately the science will benefit from that. And in this slide, you can see all the different activities and tasks of our access work package in Interact 3, and also their relationship between with the other work packages in Interact 3. So we have Interaccess, we have the management and coordination, we have the activities related to the research stations, we have our TA selection panel, we have virtual access assessment board, we have our TA and RA user groups, and then we have the virtual access provision. And all those small words that are highlighted or bolded with stronger black color, those represent the areas that are either innovation, completely new for access provision in Interact, or areas that we are going to develop and take to the next level in Interact 3. And I will now present you individually in different slides these different aspects of innovation and development going to take place in access provision. So first I want to talk to you about the development of the transnational access processes. And in TA coordination and administration, where me and my project planner, Heli Niittynen, are working, we are going to develop a quality assurance program. Of course, that has been kind of implicit for transnational access procedures and virtual access provision throughout the different funding periods of Interact since 2011. We have, for example, collected feedback from 2011 from all our TA user groups and analyzed it and utilized it to develop our practices. But we are now going to put everything between covers. We are going to create a kind of a document about it, a procedure that we are really systematically going to follow and hopefully also to share as best practices with others. And this quality assurance program will really cover all the different parts of the TA selection process, the coordination, the feedback process, and so on. In addition, in Interact 3, we have the Transnational Access Safeguard. Our former work package leader, Kirsi Latola from University of Oulu, is our TA safeguard or watchdog, so to say. Then we have the data safeguard and innovation safeguard that are all working to support us in these development processes. Then what comes to the TA selection process, we are going to start or initiate an external expert pool that will come to work in addition our TA board to help with the scientific evaluation of our TA applications. So in any time we need some additional very specific expertise, then we can invite experts from this external expert pool to help with the evaluation, to get the second opinion or so. Then we are developing some access modality selection and infrastructure selection tools. I will also tell a little bit more about this in further slides. And then we have the InterAccess online application and evaluation and reporting system that all our TA users are using to submit applications, and our TA evaluators are using, the stations are using to report used access. So we are going to take several developments in this InterAccess system. We are we have already taken into use a new version of the help desk. We are working on to launch a new interface, user interface to InterAccess for station administrators. We are working on key indicator statistics. So those are statistics that we can derive from the InterAccess system to monitor our own performance, our efficiency here in the TA coordination and throughout the process from application submission to the time when the project has been completed and submitted their project report. Then we are working on developing networking and logistics tool. I will tell you a little bit more about that soon. And then we are working on ensuring and enhancing the interoperability of InterAccess with other Interact systems. So now I want to tell you about this networking and logistic aid, the logistic tool that we are currently working on developing, and that is called TinderAct. And it is not a dating tool, but it is about networking and logistic tool. And it's meant to improve and facilitate the networking across Interact consortium, across the TA users. And then also it has a lot of potential to help with the logistic planning. And it is going to be a functionality in the InterAccess online application evaluation and reporting system. And it will be used in the first stage by the TA coordination, our TA board, the stations, and it is going to support also later on our plan, the TA user projects directly. We just first need to very carefully evaluate and see how does it comply with the GDPR regulations so that we can ensure that the GDPR regulations are protected or taken into account. And this TinderAct tool will help with the scheduling of the different TA projects because at the moment we have approximately 60 projects taking place every year that we are supporting with Interact Transnational Access. So it's good to have this tool to see really how the different projects will be spread over time, spread across the stations and so on, so that we can see what's going on at the same time, whether we can find any synergies between the projects, are there any overlaps, is there any projects that we could kind of facilitate to do some collaboration, for example. So this tool is going to be applied all across the 53 stations that are offering access in Interact. I can see there is now a question in the chat. I'll try to open it, if it opens. I'm really sorry this doesn't now open the chat box. So if someone had a question in chat, could you please say it out loud? You can unmute your microphone for the while. Okay, let's move forward and then I will take that question a little bit later on. Then we are developing these different tools for the transnational access applicants, and these will be coming up in spring, summer 2020. So very often the people or the TA applicants are asking, what is the best modality of access for my study? Would it be physical transnational access? Would it be remote access, or would it be virtual access? And now we are developing this access modality selection tool that will help to answer that question. And it will be a kind of a simple test or a set of questions that we are going to present when you are preparing an application or considering submitting an application. And then based on your answers to those questions, you will get a kind of a recommendation of the different modality or modalities of access that would probably best fit your study. So that tool will help you to come up with a conclusion whether to apply for physical access, remote access, or use virtual access, or a combination of these. Then the second question that is very often asked or wondered by the TA applicants is, what are the most suitable stations for your study? Where should you apply for transnational access? And we are going to develop this infrastructure matrix that you can see now on the left-hand side of the slide to find out what would be the most suitable stations for your study. So how you can utilize then this infrastructure matrix is that if you know your own study and where is it focusing on, and you can identify what are the closest societal challenges where your study is related to. And then, of course, you can also choose the environmental envelope that is in your focus or the most interesting to you. And you can see what are the stations located in that cell of the matrix. And we will make this interactive and direct you or offer you directly links to these stations. So then once you identify the environmental envelope and the societal challenge, you can focus your search to those stations in that matrix cell to start with and find out and learn more about those stations, whether those would be the ones that are best suitable for your study. Then I will talk about the development of virtual access, and that meant the free access to data and metadata from the stations. And we have this virtual access single entry point on the Interact website at the moment. And the good point in virtual access is that it doesn't have any selection or evaluation process. Anyone can access this type of data. And this has become more and more important now, actually very rapidly, very urgently, now that we have the COVID-19 virus pandemic around the world. So many people, many scientists, we can't travel. We have to sit here and work from home, work from remote conditions. And it's very likely that there won't be any field work happening in summer 2020. So under these circumstances, it would be even better to have an access to data anyhow, despite of the circumstances. And what we have decided to do in this situation is that, of course, our plan originally also has been to strongly develop virtual access provision and to expand it from 18 to 32 partners offering VA. But what we have decided to do now in this situation is that we will advance the virtual access provision, and we have started it now. So we try to work as fast and as efficiently as possible to open up more and more virtual access already during the spring and summer, so that those of you who are confined home without the possibility to do any field work or obtain samples and do analysis, you would have some data, hopefully, that you could utilize in your research. And also perhaps also develop new ideas and new collaborations during the process. And this virtual access provision, the single entry point to virtual access in Interact, it is led by a company called Incode, and they are located in Bologna in northern Italy. And they are Interact partner. And they are doing this development of virtual access in collaboration with the Interact data team, our virtual access safeguard, and of course with the stations. So we are going to expand the virtual access provision from 18 to 32 partners, who are then going to offer free access to data and metadata from the Interact stations. And for that, we are going to develop this virtual access single entry point version 2. So we are going to take that to the next level, to much improved, enhanced level. We are going to add the very good search engine. We are going to offer some data products and services functionalities. We are going to ensure the interoperability with other Interact systems. And at a little bit later stage in the next couple of years, we are going to provide also the TA users a metadata description template. And we are going to do an Interact metadata tag pilot that the stations and also our TA users could, if they want, tag their data with the Interact data tag, so that it would be then searchable and identifiable with different search engines as Interact data. Then couple slides about this very contemporary situation, this new world where we are living right now at the moment, and still are probably going to be for a couple months at least. And it's the novel coronavirus and its effects on Interact transnational access. So we have prepared during the couple past weeks information and action plan that has been communicated to the stations and TA users. And we have sought extension for Interact 2, and we are now waiting for the decision that's supposed to arrive in a couple of weeks' time. And during that while, we have instructed our TA users to wait with the travel reservations or book refundable and exchangeable tickets to travel the stations. And also we have urged everyone to think of possibilities or opportunities to shift from physical transnational access to remote access. And we actually know, and we're really happy to learn already, that there has actually been projects that have utilized this possibility and shifted from the physical access visit to remote access to the station that is still open. Then there are two different scenarios. If the extension will be granted, then we will postpone the physical access where needed from this summer to summer 2021. And if the extension is not granted, what we will do is that we will transfer the project granted funding from Interact 2 to Interact 3 whenever and wherever needed. And the physical access will be postponed to 2021 where needed. And what we foresee for the forthcoming summer, for summer 2020, is that some of the remote access is shifted, some of the transnational access is shifted to remote access by agreement between the station and the TA users. And then some, depending on the situation, how it develops, a little bit or a lot of transnational access will be postponed to summer 2021 or to year 2021. And as I already told you about, we will really focus on and really do our best to secure the utilization and development of virtual access instead. Then we of course have our TA user community. We now are gathered here together to the TA user community meeting. And I just want to highlight first and say to everyone that our TA users, you are part of the Interact family of friends. And it's really, really important to us that you will succeed in your studies and that we will be able to help and support you to do excellent science. And for that, we are going to utilize this meeting that we have now as a kick-off to TA Talks. And that's going to be a webinar series that is going to continue at least as long as we are working from home and working from remote offices. And there's probably not much fieldwork going on. So what we are going to do is that we are going to initiate a webinar series starting in a couple of weeks of time, where all our TA users and the stations and different work package leaders in Interact 3 can book a time, a presentation slot of 30 minutes or so, and we are going to gather together in a webinar in every couple of weeks. And we are going to learn from each other and share our ideas and share our research and to really discuss about different things, what's related to our research in these TA Talks. And hopefully that will bring us to keep the community together and to kind of help us in the situation to still advance the research, the excellent research that everyone is doing. And then hopefully during the next years on the course of Interact 3, this newly established collaboration, networking, all the excellent science that is done with support from transnational access, that's hopefully leading to different synthesis papers. We hope that the TA users, TA user projects are gathering together and start brainstorming and preparing these kinds of synthesis papers together on various topics, and hopefully publish those then in really high-ranking science journals and also make popular science out of their findings. Then in the lower part of the text slide, we have other kinds of activities we have in our TA user community. We have the Facebook group for TA users and station managers. That has become a really important channel of communication now during the COVID-19 outbreak. I'm always monitoring this Facebook group. It's a private group and try and do answer all the questions raised there as fast as possible so that then everyone will get an answer at the same time to these most frequently asked questions. Then of course we will arrange face-to-face meetings when that is again possible. We'll arrange all kinds of webinars to the TA users, to the stations, to the station administrators and so on. We are having these Arctic research blogs. We are going to invite more bloggers for next summer to hear about their and learn about from their experiences under these exceptional circumstances. Then we have an Instagram account. You can see our user name there. And then we have transnational access ambassadors. So that was my last slide. I wish to thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to collaboration with all of you. It has already been wonderful so far, and I'm sure we'll do many, many good things, important things in the future together. And here you can find our contact information at the TA coordination at Oulu. It's my email address and then Heli Niittynen's email address, and you are free to contact us anytime. I will now stop sharing my screen so I can see the chat question. Okay, it has been just actually not a question, but it has been some comments too. There has been also good idea to modify the name of Tinder Act to Tinter Act, so that then it is even more about Interact than Tinder. That's a good idea, and it is possible to modify the name. Do you have any questions or comments to me at this stage? There's still a couple of minutes before I start exceeding my presentation time.
May I?
Yes.
sorry, Hannele. I was just thinking, because you were telling about how, when it comes to the TA selection process, and about the developments, that there will be extra expert pool that will be added and things like that. Is everyone aware of how the evaluation process is going on today, or can you very briefly just mention how it works today?
Yeah. It's a two-stage process. So once the call is closed, then me and Heli in the TA coordination, first of all, we make eligibility check. So we go through all the applications and check that the applications are eligible, so that no one is applying to the station that is in the same country where they are working, because that's the case when you are not eligible. And after those applications have been conducted eligibility check, then we will send them to scientific evaluation. And that scientific evaluation is done by this TA board. And that's a board of experts, external experts, and also station manager representatives. So there is a station manager from each geographical region, from North America, from Russia, from Scandinavian stations, from North Atlantic stations, from stations in Svalbard. And then there is experts from, for example, permafrost, biogeochemistry, medicine, plant ecology, ecosystem science, and so on. And then the TA board members make a scientific evaluation, and the TA board then convenes to make access recommendations. And it means that they discuss and go through every single application and make a joint statement, evaluation statement. And in that statement, they indicate whether or not they recommend a project for access to the specific station where they have applied. And after that, these recommendations are sent to research station managers. And it is the stations then who make the final decision whether they accept a project that is recommended for access or not. So it is kind of a two-stage. There's the administrational state of eligibility check, and then the two-stage evaluation and selection process. Okay?
Thank you very much, Hannele.
Are there any other questions? Elke?
Okay. Hi, I have a questions regarding the TNA project metadata you mentioned. So that it's only the metadata is collected, or is also foreseen that these TNA project scientists have to save their data for a specific time to make them available if someone will ask for it?
Yeah, we will of course start with the metadata. And it's something that we are not going to force, and it cannot be forced, but we will recommend it, and we will encourage to share the metadata, of course, for that part, of course, that we have supported from Interact Transnational Access. And then the next step after that then, of course, is to also encourage and support the sharing of actual data. And that can be, of course, done at the stage when the scientists have published their data already themselves. So then it becomes easier and kind of more comfortable to share your data once you have published it. So that's something that I can see happening in the course of the time, but it's definitely not going to be anything that we are going to force. But it's something that's found very important also by the European Commission, to go more and more to this open access data. So it's definitely something we need to recognize and encourage people to do.
Okay, thanks, great.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I thank you for your patience and for listening to me, and then we will continue in our program. I will now share the the program again with you so you can see where we are. We have to go a little bit back in the program. Let's try again here. Okay, you are now able to hopefully see my screen again. So next we are going to hear about Interact matchmaking tools and guidelines for safe and efficient fieldwork. And this presentation is going to focus on the Station Manager Forum activities. Unfortunately, Elmer Topp Jørgensen from Aarhus University and Morten Rush from University of Copenhagen were forbidden, or they were not able to attend our TA user community meeting. But luckily, we have our wonderful coordinator, Margareta Johansson, who is going to give the presentation on their behalf. Welcome, Margareta.
Thank you, dear. Okay, me again, everyone. Good afternoon this time. That's good. We are making progress. Yes, I'm just going to share my screen and then we can start. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. It's big.
It's only the first slide, then it should go back to normal.
Oh, okay, good. So if I do like that, yes.
Yeah.
Can you see this thumbnail thing as well, or is it just me? Can I hide it? Good. Okay. So yes, as you see, I'm not Elmo and not Morten, but I will do my very best to take you through this presentation anyhow. As I mentioned earlier today, Interact has been gathering information about the stations. This was first done in Interact 1 and was published in 2013 or something like that the first time. So since then, I mean, when we started that, we were 40 something stations, and now we are 80 stations. So of course, the 2015 edition was a thick one. And if we want to bring those around and distribute them, because they are very nice as coffee table, you know, just flip pages in those books, but it also becomes very heavy. So now we have, what we have done, we used to have 4 pages on each of the research station, but now we have 2 pages on each of the research stations. So we have actually removed some of the details. The details are available online on our website, but we are minimizing it to 2 pages per station in the catalog to be able to fit everyone and not end up with a thick Bible that will end up somewhere in some shelf. So the travel catalog is a description of the stations. It includes general climate information. There are lots of photos and maps showing the location, and then also contact details so that you know where and who to contact. And it says more information are available in the Interact GIS tool, and I will come back to that. But as it's mentioned here as well, that the second edition of this station catalog, which was printed in 2015, did include more detailed information, but because we are so many stations, we decided to make it a lighter one. Interact has also compiled information about research and monitoring, and this report was published in 2015, so for our first Interact project. There was, it's basically an overview of the ongoing science at the station, and also on the parameters that are being monitored at the different stations. This is currently being integrated in the Interact GIS tool, which will obviously be presented later. But it includes a lot of metadata. So basically what you can find in this is a map of all the Interact stations. At this point in time in 2015, it was only 42 stations that were part of the network. So this inventory is for 42 stations and not for the 88 stations. But for these 42 stations, there is a map of the Arctic, and you have all the dots, and then you can have, for example, if you have a particular glacier or glacier mass balance monitoring, and then you can see immediately what stations are monitoring this parameter, etc. So there are many of the different disciplines that are presented like that with a map, and then you can immediately get an overview what stations are doing what monitoring. And of course, as a scientist, you can flip pages and you can say, okay, I'm interested in biodiversity. Who is doing the biodiversity monitoring, for example? And then you go straight to these stations, and then you can get more information on online on our website, as well as on the Interact GIS. It also includes a description of selected scientific networks with best practices and recommendations for a minimum monitoring system for stations. So as we mentioned before, Interact stations, there is a huge difference between the different stations. There are some stations that are very small, there are some stations that are very big, there are some stations that have been running for more than 100 years, and there are stations that have been running for less than 2 years. So everything in between. And of course, we want to learn from each other, and that is why the station managers have put the information that they have together and made a minimum recommendation for a minimum monitoring system for stations. So people that are starting new stations can then use this as a guideline. Interact GIS. Yeah, this is an online tool that has been developed for many years. And the idea is that you should be able to go straight there and get information about the different systems. It includes, well, I mean, for example, if you want to search for stations that are located within a certain climatic zone or a certain permafrost zone, then you can click that and then you get the stations. It is being updated, so more information, the information, as we said, from the monitoring report will be included in this, but it's not yet there, but it will be. And also, of course, we will have a search function. If not, it's not really useful. Yeah, so I think these are just screenshots of future things where you could search for either organizations, you can search for climate zones, features, etc. So it will be searchable. And this is where you can look at what has been ongoing at the different stations in a different time scale. So for example, if you're interested in knowing, okay, what stations during the International Polar Year in 2008 and 2009, who did what measurements, then you can go in here and you can type those years in, for example, and then use the different disciplines, keywords, or whatever. So basically, finding out more about the stations, what has been done and what can be done. In addition to this, some of the research stations are also using Interact GIS as an application to go there. For example, Tafala and Abisko in Sweden. So what they're using then is, when you when you have been granted your when you have been granted TA and want to go to these stations, and then when you are going to apply to go for a certain period of time, then you immediately add all the metadata for your project, where you're going to work, what you're going to do, is it going to affect the environment, is it and in that case how will you restore it, etc., etc. So this is a way, when you have this in the application phase already, first of all, you know for sure that you are not allowing researchers to go to a place. I mean, for example, if you were going to look at nutrients in the ground and then you go to a place where someone has been using fertilizers, that would not be a good idea. And this you can keep track of if you have the metadata already in the application system, so to say. So it is a very useful tool, and that is being developed further and will be available to everyone to use. Then during last year, or actually quite many years, but last year when I say we, it is the APEX, Association for Polar Early Career Scientists, as well as the Station Managers Forum, put together a fieldwork planning handbook. And this is basically, it's a very nicely illustrated book. It's supposed to be on your desk at home. If you have students, PhD students, that have not been going to the field, I have been going to the field for more than 20 years, but I found it really useful as well. So I would not say that it is only the PhD students, but if you have people that, it's especially good for people that haven't been to the field before. It talks about preparations. What do you need to prepare at home? How can you make sure that everything, because of course many times most of the Interact stations are located in a very remote area. You need to plan everything into the smallest detail at home to make sure that it works and that you have spare parts, what you need. You cannot go to the supermarket and buy a new screw if you need it or whatever. You have to be prepared. And this is an excellent guidebook, what you need to think about, when you need to ship things, what permits do you need to take, what should you think about in terms of safety, etc., etc., etc. So this is a very useful tool that, I mean, we are attending all the major conferences. We were supposed to be at the Arctic Science Summit Week, but we are at all the major Arctic conferences, and we usually have a booth where we are standing, handing out those fieldwork planning handbooks. So if you are interested in getting any of those reports and books that I've been talking about, then either visit us or contact us, and you can have a copy. Or
Margareta, I can also show in the end from the screen where to find those from the Interact website.
I have added that in the presentation.
Good. Perfect.
Yes.
10 points to you.
Thank you, dear. I hope I will get a little gold star.
You get many.
Oh, okay. This is what it included, but I think it is actually exactly what I said. But just to make sure that we're not missing out on anything. Practical knowledge and best practices, comprehensive checklist, recommendations for fieldwork preparations, safety aspects during transport at stations and in the field, most common natural hazards in the field, best measures to prevent incidents, commonly used communication and navigation tools, environmental considerations, resources for jurisdictional information. And there was one other thing that I was thinking about. Actually, there is a chapter as well of what do you do when you get back home? How do you, I mean, so that you ensure that your data is ended up in an open access database with a number, ISBN number, is that what it's called? Anyhow, when you are making sure that you can tag it, and then you actually see if it's used or not in the end. Yes. In addition to that hard copy book that you have got on your shelf in your office, then we have also made a practical field guide. There are smaller, it's like this sort of, and with waterproof paper printed so that you can actually put it in the pocket, but you can also bring it out in the field. You don't have to keep it in your pocket, but you can use it in the field. And this is a handy field guide that you can use when you are in the field. So it includes tips about a specific safety tip, equipment list, advices on water, terrain, wildlife, codes of conduct, local traditional knowledge, first aid basics, emergency preparedness, space for relevant contact details. There are, for example, practical advices, how to put up a camp, what to think about, where to put what. You should not put the toilet next to the blah, 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 etc. I mean, most of the things are, you might know anyhow, but there are many things that are very good to think about. And when it comes to drainage patterns of water, etc. Also, there are a lot of recommendations of how to, when in the other book it says how to prepare for if something will happen, because you need to know before something happens who is going to do what. And that is something that is also in this practical field guide, and where you, as you see here, that there are space for relevant contact details. So you beforehand you put down who's going to contact who, etc., so that you know if something happens, what to do, and that's very important. Okay, so as Hannele said, so we have a lot of publications like these, and they are all available. On our website. And our website is eu-interact.org. And on the first page that looks like this, there is something called publications. So if you just scroll down, you come to publications, and then you click there. And all the books that we have been talking about here and more are available here under publications. And of course, you can also contact us if you would like a hard copy. With that, thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm delighted to take them.
Thank you so much, Magan, again. Are there any questions to Magan? Okay, if no questions at this point, we will move forward. And I will show you again the program. Can you see my screen now again? So next we are going to have a station highlight, and that's the second last item in our program today. And we are going to have Elke Ludewig from Sandvik Observatory presenting us her station. It's very interesting to hear Elke today. And Elke, please, you can proceed with your presentation and start sharing your screen. Welcome to our presenter.
Okay. Okay, can you see my...
Yeah, I can see it now. And now there's the presentation mode on.
Okay, great. So thank you a lot that I have the chance to present my station, the Sandvik Observatory. We're now switching more or less from the Arctic area to an area which has quite a similar climate. We're going to the European Alps and the high altitudes. Before I start, I want to just give a quick overview of my person. So my name is Elke Ludewig. I studied meteorology at the University in Hamburg, also doing there some geophysics and oceanography. And then I also did my PhD in Hamburg regarding offshore wind farms and all the buildings you can see. This is the main buildings from the University in Hamburg, the German Climate Computing Center, and also the Max Planck Institute is there located. And those were more or less my study home there. After, also during my PhD, I did a lot of campaigns, measuring campaigns. Most of them were on the ocean with these two ships. And after my PhD, I switched to the Antarctica, so the total opposite area you're interested in. But yeah, I did an overwinter there at the German station called Neue Meyer Station 3. And I was there the head of the Meteorological Observatory and also responsible for quite a lot of measuring campaigns like sea ice measurements and so on. And after that time, I switched back to Europe and settled down in Austria and becoming the head of the Sandvik Observatory in May 2016. And now I have the pleasure to present my station to you. So just to have a quick overview what we're doing now, on the picture you can see the mountain Mount Hohe Sandvik it's called, and here at the top there is the station. And I want just present what is the SBO, where is it, some facts. I want to go through the history because it has quite a long history. I will present the infrastructure, some monitoring and research, and then showing what or how we can help researchers for the transnational access. So we're calling the Somlik Observatory a research station for climate, environment, and mountain research. It started in 1886 and it's still operating. So now we have about 134 years of climate monitoring. And during the years, you can see here how it changes even the shape of the buildings. And we're still doing these climate monitorings and meteorological observations, but we expand to much more environmental studies now. So the location, it's in Europe, in Austria. It's at the border of the province of Austria, of the provinces of Austria, Salzburger Land and Carinthia. It's in the Alpine, and it's about 90 minutes by car from the city Salzburg away. The closest village is called Rauris, and from there, then you can drive 30 minutes into the mountains, and there's our bottom station where you can jump into the cable car, which bring you up within 10 minutes to the station, or from the bottom station, you can also hike, and depending on your condition, it will take 5 to 8 hours. Or if you're really quick runner, like my technician stuff up there, you can also do it in 3 hours. So the station is located at Mount Hoher Somlik. It's at an altitude of 3,106 meters, and it's especially important, it's on the Alpine ridge. So it is exposed and detached, which means we get all these air transportation from all directions. And the good thing is to detect that our cable car is just for the station. It's not a tourism, so it's not open for tourism. So it's really limited tourism up there because the people have to hike. And so we are nearly emission free. We have these important long-time series, especially for these climate data, and we also are operating 24/7. Our research monitoring is summarized in the program called ENVISION. It's Environmental Research and Monitoring Somlik, and it's focused on atmosphere, cryosphere, and biosphere, and I will show you this a little bit later. And it's also important that the Somlik Observatory is contributing to the most important monitoring networks, meaning also to atmospheric climate observing system as well as to terrestrial climate observing systems. Coming quickly to the history, so what you can see here are more or less the founding fathers of the Somlik Observatory, because after the Second World Meteorological Congress in 1879, which promoted the establishment of mountain observatories and mountain stations, the Somlik Observatory was established in 1886, and by the initiative of the meteorologist Dr. Julius Hahn, you can see on the left. He was the former director of the Austrian Weather Service called SAMC, and by the support of the mine owner in the middle, it's called Ignaz Roecher, who has the technicians to build up a house up there in the mountains, and also by financing support of the Alpine Association Deutsch und Österreichischer Alpenverein, the Somlik Observatory could be built. And despite of the difficult times regarding war, as you know, the World First and the Second, and also financing crisis, and also this situation now with the coronavirus, the operation have continued over the decades, and the infrastructure has been adapted to the necessary requirements. So you already know this picture now. This was the shape in 1886. It changed now to the 1950s, where the first cable car was installed here, which make the access to the station much easier. The station was this part when you see my mouse, and on the left side, this was already a hut of the Alpine Association where people could sleep and find rest after a long hike. Then in the 1980s, there was the biggest change in the history of the observatory. It got this reddish shape. Now it gets more modern. They got a new cable car for more safety, and also the whole house complex was connected to the public power supply via 20 kV power line, which we still have, and this allows us to start environmental measurements because we didn't have to burn wood anymore to keep the houses warm and produce energy. So there it starts more or less that the station becomes emission free. In the 2000s, then we had the most issue due to climate change and the defrosting of the permafrost in this area. We had to do a lot of construction. You can see here the concrete fixing for the rock protection. And then in the 2018, we developed and renewed the cable car again, which is now not a wooden box anymore. So it's really like cabin, you know, from a lift. And this allows us now to reach the observatory all the time, independent of wind speeds. We can still run the cable car up to wind speeds of 100 kilometers per hour. So I lightened the picture a little bit so that's easier to see. On the left hand, you see the Hut Sittel house. That's the accommodation area where also the scientists can sleep. It's only open in summertime. The rest of the time, we can use it for scientific purpose. And the scientists who coming up even wintertime, they have a little kitchen and can so prepare food for themselves and be self-independent there. Then we have measuring terrace and the two towers. The small towers is still the old towers built in 1886, and this is the new 10-meter high tower for the wind speed measurements, and then a couple of terraces for suction chimneys for air chemistry measurements, and so on. Then we have the new cable car. In this, the main building area, we have our offices, we have living areas for the technicians who are staying there about 15 days and then changing shift, and also some laboratories. And then here we have the power station where the cable come in, and we also have a generator just in case we have a power outage. And the rest, you must know, we're using the whole field for analysis and measurements. We have quite a couple of platforms from the altitude of 1,500 meters up to 3,100 meters, which will be also checked by my technician once a month. So here you can see again the power cable. We also have telephone and internet connection there. Here you can see the generator in case this cable breaks or something happens to it. Here you can see now the cable car. Here on the left side, you can see the station. It's the bottom station where we also have measurement equipment. And the difference between the top and the valley is about 1,500 meters, and we can reach the station within 10 minutes. In this cable car, we can transport 6 people maximum, and we're using also these cable car for profile measurements, so we can put instruments on the cabin, and if the cabin is not enough, we can also change and put a transport hanger on it, which can carry up to 650 kilograms. Coming now to monitoring and research, as I told you, we are connected or involved in a lot of monitoring programs. I put some here on the list for you. Maybe it's interesting, ALTER and also GAW and ACTRIS, and due to that, that we are quite a good part in these monitoring programs. We have a big pool of standardized high quality data, and these data are free for our researchers, and well, they are all, I would say you can find them all in the world because of the World Data Center and so on, but if scientists need help, we're helping them to put the data together and for their analysis. As I told you, we have these research monitoring program Envision, and you can see here some highlights picture out of it. We're doing these atmospheric measurements. We have these glacier and also animals and permafrost and biodiversity measurements, so that you have a clue how it looks like. We're focusing on these 3 spheres and also the transport and the exchange between the spheres, and trying to have even special campaigns for interesting questioning regarding special scientific questions. So this is our long time series of temperature starting in 1886. It's based on HISTOP. It's a Hoboken Station monitored series. And more or less all our meteorological parameter last till 1886, and it's included in all these networks like GTS, GCOS, WIGOS, and so on. Then we have, for the atmosphere, we also have doing a lot of radiation measurements. For the sunshine duration, it lasts back in 1886, but with the BSRN station, for example, with the sun tracker, we started in 2011, and the spectral UV is together measured with the university in Vienna called BOKU. It started in 1994, and there we also do our measurements in special networks. Then you can see here our air chemistry laboratory, where we measure trace gases and greenhouse gases. We have now our CO2 measurement of time series of about 20 up to 25 years with some stops, you can see here, due to a power outage in the past. Then we have a laboratory for aerosols. There we focus mostly on events like Sahara dust events. You can see here then the station can be totally reddish due to the Saharan dust. We have different instruments based on the GAW. On the GAW requirements, and also have a lot of filter analysis. Due to filter analysis, we're also measuring radioactivity. Like here, you can see here, there's a chimney going out, sucking the air into it. And here we have a digital where the filter is in, and these the materials on the filter will be also analyzed on radioactivity, but we're also measuring the local dose rate. And here you can see the happening of Chernobyl. We started the radioactivity measurements in 1983, 84, and 1986 we got this big peak. And additional to these mountain areas, we're also measuring radon, which is quite interesting compared to our permafrost measurements. For the atmosphere, we're also doing a lot of analysis for deposition, for precipitation chemistry and snow chemistry. My team up there taking a lot of probes and even supporting projects. And we're doing also these profiling, snow profiling, and getting the different layers also for Saharan dust and defining them. We're supporting the avalanche service, and this is all connected with different partners which financing the different programs. Coming now to the cryosphere, we're doing the traditional, let's say, glacier mass balance measurements in this area. Here on the left side, you can see in the middle is the Somlik Observatory. We have two glacier areas, the Fleiss Case and the Goldberg Case, but my glacier people are also responsible for the biggest glacier in Austria called Pasterze, which is about 40-50 kilometers airline away from the Somlik Observatory. And the new thing, we started in 2012 to set up a lot of cameras for the different glaciers to monitoring the change much better, and even to show it better to people, to tell them and show them how it's changing and that the glacier is really reducing every year. Even connected to the cryospheres or the permafrost measurements, you can see here, here's the Somlik Observatory, and we have different fields which are in interest of permafrost changing. At close to the station at the top of Mount Hohe Somlik, we have 3 boreholes which are going down to 20 meters, and we have 1 borehole down to 12 meters where we're measuring temperature, and the rest area we have boreholes up to 2 meters. Additional to the temperature measurements, we also have geophones in the area to analyze more or less the sound of rockfall or avalanches and so on. Coming now to the biological studies, we have quite a long time series now for studies bats. Here you can see it's a bat detector. It's quite impressive that these little animals showing up there in summertime. It's starting mostly by the end of March and ending in August, September, that they're coming there, and we record them and analyze which kind of bats are showing up there and what they're actually doing. And due to that, we started also to start analysis for insects and mammals. We have bioaerosol studies, and also since last year we have a pollen trap to analyze what's passing by with the wind systems. So this was a quick overview. If you're more interested in what we're doing, I can recommend our webpage is somlik.net, and under the download portal you can see our reports. Here on the left side you can see it's so-called our Somlik brochure, which summarize our research activities. We have every year about 40 research projects, and last year we had one Interact transnational access project from the University of Utrecht, the department EMO, and the new version of this brochure will show up by the end of April this year. Coming now to our transnational access support, I would say. So here you can see my core team, 3 people are missing, and you must know our station is staffed with a minimum of 2 technicians around the year. It is so that these technicians stay there 15 days, so that they're also day and night time there, and every Monday we have a shift that one guy is leaving and another guy is coming up, and depending on activities, there can be also more technicians up there. So how we can help our scientists which are interested to do studies there, we can help with installations, we can help you with logistics, we can also do sampling. So if you're not able to have the transnational access, we can also do quite a lot of remote. There we're really special because we do quite a lot of remote stuff. We can help you with maintenance of instruments. We have space for data storage, and we can also give you quite a lot of data. We can help you with track the monitoring, with quality management, because we have quite lots of IT tools we're using. For example, KNIME for visualization. You can get you can become a user from us and can use these tools. And we're using also the SOMBLIK eGroupware, for example. This is a tool where we can also monitor observations. So due to the fact that the technicians are around all the day, they can also, they're tracking if for example, a hiker is coming up and smoking, we say, okay, from this and this time there was a smoker around, and we also have some other sensors. And if you need, for example, these environmental observation data, it's possible to get. And what we're now building up, and unfortunately it takes more time than I was expecting, but it looks good that we'll finish it this summer, is our SOMBLIK data portal. There we want to make it easier for our scientists to find the data which were produced at the SOMBLIK Observatory, and this database will show you actually where you can find the data if it's not already in our database. If it's in the database, and if it's free and we have the right to give it to you immediately, you can download it and you get the download link. Otherwise, you get, for example, the contact who you can contact to get the data. But due to the fact that we are funded by the Austrian government, even most of the projects up there, all the data are free. And in future, we will also ask our scientists to, after they have published, for example, their project, that they prepare a zip file or something with the quality data, and then we can give them also a hard link, so in future people can download the data and connect it to your project and, for example, use it for additional research. And one thing I also want to tell you, we can also help you with PR. So we are in contact with a lot of media, for example, from Bavaria and Austria. And if you need some help to be in the news, like on TV or radio or something, we can arrange this, because the people are always interested in what's happening on SOMBLIK Observatory, and the people can promote their project and even interact. So what you can see here, people are always working hard. Sometimes we have really quite cool view and also cloud formations, and then people taking the phones and the cameras and doing quite a lot of photographs. And yeah, so that's the quick overview of the SOMBLIK Observatory. Thank you for your interest, and if you have questions, you can contact me or ask me now. Thanks.
Thank you, Elke. You have a very impressive records for monitoring there, reaching back to 150 years or so. Very interesting to hear about that. And also nice services you have offering to the scientists. Does anyone have questions or comments to Elke?
Of course, Hannele.
Yes, good.
If I may, sorry. I'm doing a one-man show here, sorry. I have never been to your research station, but I hope I will have the opportunity to go there because it looks amazing. I have, however, been to a Jungfrau Observatory in Switzerland, which is an atmospheric research station. But when we went there, I think it's a little bit higher. I think it's around about 3,500 meters above sea level or something like that. But when we were there, we felt the altitude, so we got a little bit of a very minor altitude sickness. Is that something that you can sort of, is there anyone who's working there that can feel this, or is it okay, so it's no problem? How does it work?
Well, it's depending really on the people. So we are quite 500 meters lower than Jungfraujoch, so it's less affecting these high sickness. But we had people which had the ears exploding and so on, and so we let them in the village and help them to do the measurements up there. But most of the people, they don't feel it, because we also tell them, for example, please arrive and do their first sleep in the village or in the valley, and then going up, so slowly acclimate to the altitude. But it's not as worse as most of people thinks.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments to Elke? If not, thanks a million, Elke, for your very interesting and good presentation. It was a pleasure to have you here in our meeting. And now in the program, we have time for a discussion and closing of the meeting. So I don't have any specific topics prepared for this discussion time. So now, if you have any questions or further comments, there's a possibility to ask or comment. And if not, then it's time to close the meeting. Okay, there are no further questions or comments at this stage. So I wish to thank all of you from your participation. It has been a pleasure to host this meeting to you. I hope you enjoyed the meeting. I certainly did. It was nice to meet all of you online, and I hope you have a really nice rest of the day and rest of the week. And please take care, and let's continue our collaboration in the same nice manner as we have done so far. Thanks ever so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you ever so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.